Popcorn Poops is brought to you by Audible.com. Please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a free audiobook and free 30-day trial of their subscription service. Audible is the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 150,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. Audible.com is offering a free audiobook download to listeners of Popcorn Poops along with a 30-day trial of their services. This week we're recommending Life Itself, a Memoir by Roger Ebert, narrated by Edward Herrmann. To download this or another audiobook of your choice, visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops. Be sure to visit the correct URL so they know we sent you, and you'll be helping to support our show. Again, that's audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for your free audiobook. We are the Popcorn Poops.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Popcorn Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Jessica.
And I'm Dustin.
This month, our theme is Best Picture Oscar winners, and my pick for this week's episode is Ridley Scott's 2000 film, Gladiator. If you're syncing this recording up to the movie, go ahead and start the film, and then press pause as soon as the DreamWorks vanity card completely fades to black.
It's time to start the movie. Syncers, press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we are off. So this is the second movie in our month of Best Picture Oscar winners. And it's your pick.
It is.
And I would like for you, if you would, to explain why you picked the longest movie that we've ever done on Popcorn Poops.
Well, I wanted to pick Braveheart, but
you did, but I put a nix on that.
I really wanted to pick Braveheart. Well, because this was the next best thing for me besides Braveheart.
And you hadn't actually seen this before.
I hadn't actually seen this before.
Before preparing for this.
This was one of those movies that for forever I've heard about, and I always assumed that I would love, because I love, of course, my favorite movies are fantasy movies, good fantasy movies, and good sci-fi movies. And then after that, my favorite movies are any type of horror movie, bad or good.
Right.
But historical pieces, like that in my mind, I love ancient literature and I love ancient history, and I minored in history in university, and I really am into that kind of stuff. And when they're done well, it kind of feels like fantasy. Historical
like
pieces
the
do.
Sword and Sandals epics and things
exactly.
like that. Sure, that's kind of in your wheelhouse, I think.
It definitely is. So anything that's like, when I say period pieces, I mean like medieval or older period pieces. I'm really into, and I always assumed that I would be totally crazy about this movie, but it was really long, so it was daunting to sit down and watch. And anytime I ever mentioned it to you, you were always like, yeah, I guess we could watch that. And so I just never got around to watching it until now seemed like the perfect time.
Part of the reason that I wasn't super thrilled about revisiting this is that I didn't remember really caring for it all that much, and upon revisiting it, I have confirmed that I don't really care for this movie.
You don't like this?
I don't
at
really.
all?
I mean, there are things about it that I like. It certainly is entertaining, but I think.
Are you not entertained by this
Well, no.
movie?
I mean, I think there are entertaining moments in it, but I think that the way I'm entertained by it is kind of like, if you think about some of the things that the movie attempts to say or pretends like it's saying, the way I enjoy the movie and the way I think a lot of people enjoy the movie is actually counterintuitive, I guess. Is that the right word? Or I guess counterintuitive to the messages of the film, or the supposed messages, and we'll get into what some of those may be. But yeah, like as like a kind of a popcorn, summer blockbuster kind of thing that's really over the top and violent in places. Yeah, I think it works on that level, but
it's not really best picture material.
No, not at all. I don't think it's best picture material at all.
Was there nothing else this year? Is that kind of what happened?
I should have looked up what else was nominated this year. I can look that up when you start talking at some point. But yeah, I'll have to see if there was something else that would be worthy. I tweeted about this. I was so kind of worked up watching this in preparation that I actually just couldn't hold it in. I had to tweet about it, and I tweeted that I couldn't see that Gladiator was the best picture of the week that it came out, much less the whole year.
Oh, that's really too harsh.
Yeah, it's a little harsh, but yeah,
That's
I don't know.
too harsh.
Yeah, I think the way that I enjoy this movie is actually in conflict with one of the main messages of the film. And I also think that as an action movie, it is responsible for kind of starting some bad habits that action movies have kind of followed through with. And
kind of like you can't tell what's going on action.
Well, there's that. This movie doesn't actually do speed ramping, but it does something close enough to it where it cuts back and forth between like high frame rate shots of action that look super kinetic and then slow-mo shots. And I think that kind of led to what, and
we're going to see that in this battle that's about to happen.
Sure. What someone like a filmmaker like Zack Snyder has kind of taken to be one of his, more noticeable directorial attributes is he likes to use speed ramping in his action scenes, and a lot of action movies do that these days. I actually think that we've come out of like a 10-year phase where action movies and movies of this, I don't know, ilk are all just blue and orange. Blue and orange. That's it. Like, that's the color palette, blue and orange. And right now you can see that the movie is very blue. And then when the movie ends up, when they end up in Rome, about halfway through the movie, and that's when like the main chunk of the story, the brunt of the story really kicks into gear. Of course, everything's just brown and orange. And I think that started kind of a bad trend, kind of a not very creative trend in action movies where they all just kind of visually look the same, kind of aesthetically boring because it's just kind of copy paste. Well, if it worked for Gladiator, it'll work for, whatever. So, but starting off, what we've got going on right now is actually before this scene we had some opening credit text, and the opening credit text
was, at the height of its power, the Roman Empire was vast, stretching from the deserts of Africa to the borders of northern England. Over 1/4 of the world's population lived and died under the rule of the Caesars, establishing our setting there. And then it goes on to say, in the winter of 180 AD, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius's 12-year campaign against the barbarian tribes in Germania was drawing to an end. Just one final stronghold stands in the way of Roman victory and the promise of peace throughout the empire. However, this one final stronghold that we can presume will end the Germanic battles that they have actually in real history was not at its end at all, but was interrupted by the emperor's death, as we will see here in this movie. And his son, Commodus, didn't take up the battles, and they didn't wind up doing what this movie says that they do at the end of the battle, which is conquer the Germanic tribes. Yeah.
They refer to them as barbarians in the film. Jumping back to the 2001 Academy Awards, the other nominees for Best Picture this year were Chocolat, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I love that
movie.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Aaron Brockovich, and Traffic. And of those, I would say that Traffic probably deserved it. I think
I've never
Traffic
seen
is a really, really amazing film. But I would even put probably Chocolat before this movie.
Chocolat is one of my favorite movies. I've never read the book, but it's on my list of books to be read. And the score to that movie is just incredible.
Yeah, it's great. And I think the one that kind of is a toss-up for me is this or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm not a huge fan of that movie either, but there's a lot of stuff in it that I really like. I think I might go Crouching Tiger over Gladiator, and I wouldn't go Aaron Brockovich over Gladiator because I really don't care for that movie. But yeah, almost everything that was nominated, in my humble opinion, I think deserved to take Best Picture over Gladiator, which to me is just like, at the end of the day, is just kind of a middle-brow action movie, if you can even call it middle-brow. It tries to explore some political concepts.
So here, before it goes away,
yeah, go
the
ahead.
music dun 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 dun.
Wonder what that sounds like.
You're getting a taste of what is going to happen again and again through this movie. It was in this scene where I've dun 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 dun. Like, it is so obviously Pirates of the Caribbean that it's just overwhelming. And of course, immediately I heard it and I was like, is this Hans Zimmer? This is totally Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Like, I listen to a lot of scores, but I'm not really good at name recall, and usually I can't guess really fast in a movie, but this was one of those ones where I was like, this is definitely Hans Zimmer, and it definitely is. Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard.
Yeah, Lisa Gerrard at the time, and I don't think it's this way anymore, but at the time that this came out, you could not have more than one person nominated for the same film for Best Composer or for Best Score. And even though she worked, hand in hand with Hans Zimmer on this score, Hans Zimmer was the one who took the nomination instead of her. So she basically got shoved out of the category, even though she was credited as co-composer. She couldn't actually be eligible for the award because of the way the Academy rules worked at the time.
Really shitty.
He's real shitty, real super shitty. But I think that has actually changed now. It wasn't that way, I think, for the BAFTA Awards and maybe another awards ceremony where she was nominated and I believe won alongside Hans Zimmer.
She sings the song that's really famous that goes along with this movie, Now We Are Free.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the score to this movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm a super fan of the Pirates score, so I mean, of course I love the score to this movie. Apparently not since James Horner's Titanic score has a film score been in such high demand as this one was when it came out. People just bought this up.
Yeah,
they bought it up so much.
Pirates of the Caribbean is a great score.
Yes, it is. They bought it up so much that they released, like a year later, they released another album called Gladiator, More Music from the Motion Picture. And it has like other tracks from the movie, but it also has remix tracks from the original album where they have dialogue from the movie like interlaced into the music. Like the famous quotes and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And all that makes me think of is, do you remember when Titanic did that shit?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's weird that like they were like, oh, this no movie score had been as popular since the Titanic score, and then they did the same dumb shit. And
if it sells, I guess.
No, I say dumb shit, but when I was into 4th grade and Titanic came out, and those tracks where like it has, Jack and Kate saying stuff on the My Heart Will Go On song, and it's all like, I'll never let you go, and then like Celine Dion is singing, and I totally made mixed CDs of that off of the radio because I thought it was so great.
So I have a metric fuck ton of notes
CDs,
for this.
mixtapes.
Yeah, I have a metric fuck ton of notes for this first scene that we're just kind of blowing through. Some things about like filmmaking techniques and specifically like cinematography that I wanted to talk about. This movie utilizes camera zooms, and I know that that may sound like, and I am using it as kind of a criticism. It feels a bit dated. I think it's a very dated camera technique, especially because this movie was one of the ones to pioneer it didn't actually use speed ramping, like I said, but I think it actually pioneered speed ramping in a way. I think it led to that before Zack Snyder comes along and takes the reins.
Speed ramping meaning
speed ramping meaning in one shot you go from slow mo to standard mo to regular, to whatever the regular is, the regular frame rate. So it gives this effect of like building momentum, and then the momentum is released. It's kind of a cool effect that is overused today, but at the time it wasn't, and I don't. This movie doesn't actually use it, but it uses a lot of slow mo cut with high frame rate shots.
Yeah. That
it kind of gives that same effect, and I think that this movie deserves credit for doing that. But that kind of technique, that kind of new technique feels kind of strange and out of place in a movie that still utilizes camera zooms, which people don't really use anymore. Like moving the camera itself closer to your subject or farther away from your subject, I think has become more widely accepted in the last 20 years or so of filmmaking to be the preferred technique. Because zooms just, I don't know, they
feel unnatural.
They feel strange. They feel mechanical, and I think that can take you out of the experience.
It's difficult to suspend your disbelief when you feel like you see a camera.
I did have a note about the soundtrack before I really noticed that it sounded so much like Pirates of the Caribbean. I think that specifically in the preparation for this battle,
the action scenes sound like pirates.
That's right. Okay, but in the preparation for this battle, I think that the soundtrack is really super overbearing, and it reminded me of the Lost Boys preparation for the final battle in Hook.
Okay.
So to me, it was just like, oh, this is a little too much. This is kind of cartoony and strange. I didn't care for it. But I was talking about the speed ramping and the high frame rate shots with the slow-mo shots. And there's a really strange mixture of high frame rate shots and then standard frame rate shots and then high frame rate slow motion, which is what you're supposed to use. When you create a slow-mo shot, you're supposed to shoot the scene at a high frame rate, which means that you're taking more pictures per second, so to speak.
Right.
And then when you slow that down to the standard, film 24 frames per second, then you get this illusion that it's smoothly moving in slow motion. However, this movie uses both high frame rate slow-mo and standard frame rate slow-mo, which is not what you should do. It's when you shoot something in standard frame rate, and then in post-production you decide you want it to be slow-mo, so you just slow down how many pictures or how many frames specifically are shown per second, which gives a much more choppy feel. This movie mixes all of that stuff together as though Ridley Scott and his cinematographer were on set, and Ridley Scott says, okay, this shot is going to be slow-mo, so we're going to shoot it at this many frames per second. His cinematographer works with his people, and they get the shot. And then in editing, at some point, Ridley Scott is sitting down with his editor, and he's like, oh, I want this shot to be slow-mo too. So they just take standard frame rate shots and turn them into slow-mo, and it's a mess. It's really ugly.
It is. There are some moments, I mean, even, and I certainly don't have as much of an eye for that kind of stuff as you do, but it was enough that even in these scenes, I have notes where I was like, why do we keep switching to slow-mo here and then switching to speeding up the frame rate here? And it's really looking awkward sometimes.
It feels really amateurish.
It feels choppy.
It's really amateurish. And, there's kind of a blur effect that goes on about halfway through the war scene at the beginning. And the scene actually was shot in the early evening, but it continued too long and the light apparently was drastically diminished. So in order to keep the continuity of the scene's lighting and to avoid shooting another day on the same location, the cinematographer chose to shoot the scene with a very, very low frame rate, and then to compensate for the loss of the frames that were shot were duplicated several times in post-production and then edited into the film in a way that made the switch look quote-unquote natural. I don't think it looks natural. I think it looks amateurish, like they were just rushing, like they just made some weird on-the-fly decisions that make the film look messy. I don't like how it looks. I think this is actually a pretty ugly film, all things considered. I think the costumes are great.
I wouldn't say ugly because I, as you just said, I think the costumes look awesome.
The production,
even though they're not
production design
historically
is wonderful.
accurate.
Yeah.
But
the production design is wonderful. The costumes are great. The sets are great. Some of the CG is a little bit dodgy. I think the Colosseum looks really bad. Especially the outside of it. I think it looks pretty terrible. I think Commodus's return to Rome also looks really strange to me.
But from that opening moment that we had where he was talking, where our main character, our protagonist Maximus, was talking to Quintus,
yes,
who is his second in command,
right,
general, who betrays him, and I don't get it. Like they built up to that zero whatsoever, because the only scenes we had with him in the beginning were scenes where it's like he's just as loyal as all the other guys. Like, unless, well, when we get there, I'll talk more about it.
The movie goes to great pains to tell us that Maximus has the loyalty of the army. Yes.
Well, not just of the army, but of every man that he encounters that is, I guess, not Commodus.
Right.
Like, I mean, virtually everyone he comes in contact with that he spends any time with, they're just like, we'll die for you. It's cool. We'll die for you. Because he's just got this charisma about him. But anyways, when Quintus betrays him, I'll talk more about that. But in that opening scene, we had some dialogue, and I was all ready to get into this movie, and then we had the dialogue really early on, and Quintus is like, people should know when they're conquered. And Maximus goes, would you, Quintus? Would I? And I go, oh, wait a minute.
There's some.
Are we gonna do this?
Some of the writing in this movie is pretty rough.
Unfortunate.
Pretty rough. I mean, it's co-written by actually a lot of the stuff in the first two acts, I think, of the movie. About the first third or 2/3 of the movie, a lot of it was rewritten by a man named John Logan, a screenwriter named John Logan, who was brought on to make Maximus a bit more empathetic. He added all of the stuff about what was it that he added? He added all the stuff about the afterlife, like Maximus seeing his family in the afterlife.
Seeing
and all that stuff.
Elysium?
Yeah, Elysium. Yeah, that's right.
Elysium. In Greek and Roman
Starring
mythology,
Matt Damon.
Elysium was the place of rest for the dead who were blessed by the gods. It was also known as the Elysian Fields or the Elysian Plain.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of the writing, especially, I think it's noticeably worse in the first part of the movie. I think a lot of the dialogue is really stiff. I think even some of the performances don't do the writing a whole lot of justice.
Well, the big problem that I have with the dialogue, with the writing, specifically with the dialogue, is that we're going to get a lot of scenes in this movie of really profound statements and really profound questions and it's like they're trying to blind you. It's like, listen to these words that are so great, and I am talking about something
this
so
is not
important.
A middle-brow blockbuster action movie. This is something more.
But then, like, and for the most part, you don't really listen to him because you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, he's still talking. Okay, he's still talking. And so you're not really listening. But if you actually really do try and follow what they say, a lot of the times these profound, like, little mini monologues that people have where they're discussing the idea of Rome and the idea of greatness.
What is Rome? I mean,
they do a lot of that, and they say nothing. They say absolutely nothing.
And I think that's one of the things also that John Logan came on to fix was that I think Ridley Scott thought that the original script was too on the nose. So John Logan came in to make it a little bit more, I don't know, abstruse or something, like kind of nebulous.
Well, I don't know what it was before and what was changed, but I know that the great speeches that people give when they're talking to each other, if you actually pay attention to them, which is kind of hard to do, but if you manage to do it, then you find out that they actually aren't saying anything. They're just talking and using really profound sounding serious statements that don't say anything at all.
This scene, I think,
and sometimes contradict themselves too.
This scene, I think, is a big a culprit of this exact thing. Right now in this scene, Maximus is meeting Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, and Caesar is going to lament his kind of reign of war. He says that he brought the sword, is how he describes his tenure as Caesar. Which I think is strange to me because later in the movie they make a point to say that Caesar Aurelius was always studying and he was something of a philosopher.
He even says, will they remember me as the philosopher?
Right. But obviously he's been leading people to expand his empire in bloody war in Germania.
Conqueror.
Yeah, it kind of makes him a conqueror, but the movie doesn't really frame him in that way. I guess only in very concrete terms where we see that he is going to war to expand his empire. We know that, but the way he's presented, and played, especially by Richard Harris here, is as an intellectual, and characters refer to him as maybe overstudied, where he would stay in his quarters all night just reading.
Commodus chides him for it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of it's a weird conflict that I don't understand why it's there. Like there's no consistency to that character, I don't think. That's really strange to me. But this conversation right here, so Caesar laments his, what Rome has become. Maximus is talking about his faith in Rome. Caesar laments what Rome has become. And then Maximus is going to talk about his home and family. And then eventually Caesar is going to offer him the position of not Caesar per se, but the protector of Rome, so that he can eventually pass off the power to the Senate and make Rome a republic again. That's how the movie frames it. So, of course, Caesar says that Commodus, his son and the rightful heir to the throne, is not moral, and that the politicians that are in Rome already are already corrupt, and that's why he needs Maximus. And then Maximus says he'll think about it. That's what this scene does. But this conversation that they're having right now, I don't know what the hell it's really about, because they talk about what Rome has become without actually saying what Rome has become. I mean, he talks about bringing Rome back to her true self, but we don't know what Rome's true self is. What is that? If you look at this movie without any kind of contextual understanding of the history of Rome, and even so, I don't think that will help you, because the movie is very inaccurate as to what Rome was.
Well, they directly say in this movie that Rome was founded as a republic, and they try and bring in this whole democracy thing into it, but Rome actually was not founded as a republic. Nope. It was founded as an elective monarchy. It became a republic 250 years after it became Rome. Yeah. So when they talk about the idea of Rome and they talk about the Senate and things and that's the thing, they talk about the corrupt politicians, but do they do anything about the corrupt politicians in this movie? Is there is there a corrupt politician in the film? Right, that's what I mean, is by the time we get to Rome and we're dealing with the politicians, we frame the politicians as the good guys and Commodus as the bad guy. Yeah. And so the monarchy is the bad guy and the idea of the Senate is the good guy. And again, presumably the Senate, when we get to Rome, they frame the Senate as the voice of the people. They even say in this scene, I don't remember which senator it is, Gracchus? Is that how you say his name?
Gracchus, yeah.
Gracchus?
Yeah,
Gracchus?
Gracchus.
Gracchus, that's it. He says to Commodus, he's like, we are the voice of the people. He says it outright. And I mean, actually, Roman Senate, the Roman Senate was not necessarily the voice of the people. They were chosen by people like the emperor. so it's just, I mean, there were assemblies and stuff that were literally the people, that the people directly voted and stuff, but the Senate was not one of them. And so they mix up Roman politics in a really weird way. And the problem with that, the big problem with that is that, so when you say things like the idea of Rome and bring Rome back to what she was meant to be and et cetera, you're like, what? Well, which Rome are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we talking about the one that you made up, or are we talking about the real Rome?
I don't have a problem with the film fictionalizing, what Rome was.
That's fine. You want to do that, whatever.
No big deal. I don't care about that. But if you're going to do that, if you're going to do
then
anything like that,
establish what you're making, please.
Exactly. We have to know what you're talking about
because
before
you're not talking about real Rome. So what are you talking about? What is the idea of Rome?
You know what? I think another thing, I keep going back to the editing, which is a really technical thing, and I know a lot of people don't really notice or care about editing in film, and that's fine, and I understand that. But for me, I think just overall, not just the action stuff, but even in scenes of dialogue where the editing is pretty clear cut or should be more, I guess, not casual, but I don't know what the word is, but it's not like an action scene where you have to really focus on blocking and location and movement and all that kind of stuff in a really focus on that in order to create an action scene that is coherent. But I think the editing in the dialogue scenes is kind of stiff. I think, and one of the reasons it is to me is that you'll notice that in a lot of these scenes, the frame will the shot will cut right before the subject of the frame begins delivering his or her dialogue, as opposed to allowing the dialogue to overlap and ramp into a cut, which is how you hide cuts from the audience. That's how you, I mean, the trick to...
Where you're still hearing it even though you've switched to
Exactly.
a different cut, right.
The trick to hiding cuts, I mean, there are a lot of tricks to hiding cuts, but that is the,
you don't
the
feel
end
it
goal.
because you still hear
You
them
don't want it,
talking,
right.
and you're like, oh, we're
Exactly.
still standing right here.
And like first-time filmmakers and student filmmakers and stuff like that, that's something that they have to learn because it's not something that's outwardly apparent. But trying to find techniques and ways to hide your cuts, one of the easiest ways is ramping your dialogue. And this movie doesn't do that a whole lot. There's a lot of really hard cuts between lines of dialogue where the next person who's talking, it'll go cut to that person, they start talking. Cut to the next person, they start talking. Cut to the next person, they start talking. It's really strange and kind of, I think, nitpicky, but it deserves to be mentioned because I noticed it. So
this scene here, now later in the movie, I grew to like this character more, Lucilla.
Yeah.
But especially here in the beginning with this scene where she's obviously kind of like coming on to Maximus and
they obviously have a history.
They have a history, but
don't really learn much about.
No,
but
we don't.
They come to confirm that there is a history there of some kind.
But like the way she's coming on, she's got that like, I'm in power and I'm going to win you over because I also have a vagina and I'm in power. And she plays this role and it's fine, I guess. By the end of the movie, I'm okay with her because I realize that she is a fuller character than I felt here in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But these opening scenes with her, all I could sit here and think was, God, Cersei is such a better character of this character.
Yeah. More layered and dense and
like you never see Cersei. I'm talking Game of Thrones here, of course, because I talk Game of Thrones all the time. But you never see Cersei like she's never out in your face about it when she's trying to manipulate someone. And this woman is like way too in your face with it. It's like, oh, you're trying to manipulate. We can see it. You're trying to manipulate.
Right.
and with Cersei, it's like so subtle and just perfect that you understand how she succeeds in what she does. I guess I understand why this woman gets caught in the middle of all her schemes because she kind of sucks at it. Yeah. So, but that was a complaint I had with, and also of course the same concept of Cersei kind of comes back again when I'm sitting here looking at Commodus because, man, after Game of Thrones, this is real PG, right?
It's really weak sauce, right? I mean, we're at a place in television where we've got these vast, epic, expensive shows that are on par with, epics like Gladiator or similar epics like Spartacus and Ben-Hur and things like that. Other kind of sword and sandals epics. And if they want to explore like this kind of incestuous royalty, preserving the bloodline kind of thing, you watch Game of Thrones and, I mean, not to mince words, but you see them fucking on screen.
Repeatedly.
Brother and sister repeatedly on screen. I mean, you see them banging. They don't bury the lead at all.
But in this, it's like, kiss me, sister, and then she turns away. And it happens a few times like that.
And the audience is supposed to be like, oh my gosh,
that's so wrong. That is so wrong.
First episode of Game of Thrones, you've got like straight up brother-sister doggy style.
And so watching this, it's like by the end of it, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, I guess he said some stuff that, by the end of it, he's like, you're going to produce me an heir. And it's like, well, that insinuates that they're going to have brother-sister sex, and that's awful. but but like I said, it feels kind of kid time.
Can we talk about this scene? Can we talk about this scene
God,
right here?
I don't want to see this scene. This scene really needs to just vanish from this movie.
Well, they actually cut half of it. Funny story. When I
was more?
Yeah, when I first started watching this movie, I got about an hour into it and paused and saw on the timeline, saw on my little progress bar of the movie that I was only a third of the way through the movie, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm only a third of the way through this, and I'm an hour in? What is that about? And then I realized I was watching the fucking extended edition of this thing, and then, I started watching the theatrical after that, of course. But there was more to this scene where we see Marcus Aurelius praying, and then he sees Commodus come in and he hides, and then he comes out and meets Commodus. And basically this scene is Marcus Aurelius telling Commodus that he doesn't want him to be Caesar, that he's giving power to Maximus, and Commodus
starts crying
and breaks down and says that he knows that he's a bad son. He knows that, he's never been really loved by his father. And Marcus Aurelius says, well, your fault as a son come from my fault as a father. And they have a little loving embrace until the embrace turns into a murder.
Him.
Yeah, Commodus kills him.
The embrace turns into patricide.
The thing that I wanted to say about this movie is, Jesus, it is melodramatic.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez, I mean, it is so laughably melodramatic.
This scene is I'm glad we talked over the entire thing, because I couldn't stand actually looking at that and hearing those words again.
Don't get me wrong, I love OG Dumbledore. I do.
Oh, yeah.
But he can't even save this.
No, he can't. He can't, because it's just, I mean, God, some of the stuff they're saying to each other before the embrace, and there's this moment where Commodus is like breaking down and he's crying and he's freaking out, and OG Dumbledore is sitting there and he's got his mouth, like his jaw is just dropped, and he's just looking at him like, what the fuck?
I think that was Richard Harris actually being like, are you taking it here? Are you turning it up a notch?
This is what
okay,
you're doing?
I'll meet you there, buddy. And he doesn't make it any better.
Like definitely his look in that scene right before the embrace, where his jaw is just hanging open. I'm just like, yeah, that's how I feel right now. I'm pretty sure I have exactly the same expression.
Apparently, Joaquin Phoenix got so involved in that scene where he murders his father that he actually fainted afterwards.
What?
I'm sorry for laughing at you, Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh no.
Interestingly, though, do you know how the real Marcus Aurelius died?
Yeah, he was killed. He was murdered, assassinated in a bathtub by. Oh no, Marcus Aurelius. I'm talking about Commodus. Sorry.
Yes, we'll talk about that too.
Wait. They said heart attack, right?
No. Well, in the movie, but in real life, he died of the plague.
Oh no, that's what I was thinking of.
And interestingly, later in the film, Gracchus actually asks Commodus. They have this little tit for tat back and forth in the Senate meeting room, and Gracchus asked Commodus the ironic question if he had ever, quote, embraced someone dying of plague.
Ah, true.
So I don't know if that was intentional.
Probably not. Let's not give him too much credit.
I don't think this movie's that smart.
But I did read somewhere that there was in history texts and stuff, there is some suspicion that Commodus may have actually had a hand in his father's death.
Oh, really?
That actually was a possibility. This movie mixes a lot of sort of historical stuff with just made the fuck up stuff.
There was no Maximus Decimus Meridius. Commodus was killed, but not in the Colosseum. He was not killed in battle.
He was killed by an athlete. He was killed by a wrestler
named Narcissus. And they were actually originally going to name Maximus Narcissus in the original script, but they changed that. And I think it's probably, I don't know, I think to a general audience, I think Narcissus as a name has a very specific connotation.
Even if it's passing and they don't really realize where it comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that, I don't think it's impossible to make a movie starring a character who has that name, but I think that you have to kind of imbue.
You kind of got to
some-
go with what that name
Right.
signifies. In
which
today's...
means that he's probably not going to be a very likable character.
Right.
Which I mean, I think would make a
It's
great
fine.
movie, but I don't think this movie is interested in that. I don't think this movie is interested in being challenging or thoughtful or any of those things. I think it really is just kind of a dumb action movie that's masquerading as something more.
Oh, here's the scene where Quintus betrays Maximus. And
Yeah, what happened to all that you command the loyalty of the army crap?
right. And all I can think, like, the only point of contention we saw between Quintus and Maximus is, I was like, so is he betraying him because Maximus didn't want him to move the catapults forward when Quintus commented that they should be moved forward? And Maximus
that what
was
it
like,
is?
he was like, no, man, they're cool right there. It's okay. They're already in place.
Oh, that's it. He was
and he was
just-
like,
he's-
you son of a fucking bitch.
He was butthurt.
Right.
Quintus was butthurt about the catapults. That's
Right.
it.
That's it.
That explains
because that's the only motivation we have. Because otherwise, we've seen him as his second in command general.
Well, I mean, we can finish up now 10 out of 10. Gladiator. That's it. All motivations are sound and consistent.
But like, I mean, the betrayal is so harsh because we're not just talking about, the emperor, the newly self-designated emperor, has told him to kill Maximus, obviously. But why agree to kill his family? I mean, you can agree to his face to kill his family, and you can go ahead and kill Maximus, I guess. But if you are really loyal to Maximus, which I would assume this guy would be after fighting with him for presumably a long time, then why doesn't he just say to the emperor, yes, we'll kill his family, and then, like, send all of the loyal troops that they have, send some loyal men to go get his family and take them somewhere far away,
Right.
because
didn't
Maximus
Cicero-
is someone they follow.
Why didn't Cicero do anything? I mean, if Cicero was in the room and Maximus is like, no, don't come out and make a scene. As soon as Maximus is taken away, why isn't Cicero like, hey, army, they just took Maximus. Let's go kick ass.
Right.
I mean, that's a really obvious
I
thing.
really have a hard time believing that betrayal, though, because a betrayal like that, you kind of got to set up for me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I'm under the
catapults.
impression.
They set it up. This scene right here, this fight scene where, and it's just finished, but this fight scene right here where Maximus kills the soldiers who took him to be executed, it feels particularly kind of exploitative and heavy on the badassery. Like the way Russell Crowe kind of struts around and I don't know.
Is
does
Russell
his
Crowe
thing.
really short?
I don't know. He might be.
There are some shots where he looks pretty short.
Yeah, but I think in scenes like that where it's kind of heavy on the badassery and low on the thoughtfulness or the pragmatism of maybe how that situation might actually go down, I think it kind of proves that this movie is not as thoughtful as it kind of is pretending to be. It's remarkably lowbrow, I think. It really is.
For a Best Picture winner.
Yes. Okay, to be fair, for a Best Picture winner. If this was just came out and it was another movie forgotten in a summer of a bunch of big expensive blockbusters, I think that I would probably have a slightly higher opinion of it, but I don't know. I think that the reception of a film can color, your perception of.
I don't think you would have as much hate for this film if it had just been a summer blockbuster movie. If it had just been a movie that was just, an action movie in the summer and it hadn't been a Best Picture movie.
I would still say that it's drab. I would still say that it's drab and it's ugly and it's self-serious in weird ways and overlong. It works. And I've said that at the beginning. I admit this works as an action movie. The action's fun and it's entertaining, but that's kind of against the point of the movie, I think, which is a really strange message to send. But I mean, that's just me.
So here we have the scene where
I want you to behold a color that is not blue or orange.
Yeah, it's really pretty
because
too.
this is like one of the only times that we get this in the entire movie.
It's really pretty too. They use the little boy. I don't know if he said it already, but he uses some Italian here randomly. He uses modern Italian, and I don't understand why, because the word is soldati, I think, and I'm sure I'm just massacring that word because I don't speak any Italian, but it's not Latin, which sometimes they randomly use, and it's not Spanish, which they're in Spain, which I mean, I don't know if modern Spanish was around at this time. It probably wasn't in any form that we would recognize, but I could see Scott jumping to Spanish maybe because they're in Spain.
Oh, that zoom right there as he's running down the road. It's weird, right?
Yes, it is.
It's very strange.
But it's just they do some really weird stuff with language in this movie, not just historically, because historically they have some major stupidities, like the tribes in the beginning, the Germanic tribes. The stuff they're screaming in modern German.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what you're talking about is there's a word for it. It's called translation convention. Now, translation convention basically means that in a movie where characters speak in a language that they wouldn't have spoken in at the time or at that particular place, it's for the audience. But throughout this movie, there's English, of course, there's Italian, there's German, and there's even Zulu. There's a little bit of Zulu.
What I'm talking about with the modern German, though, is something else. I'm not talking... I know what you're talking about, like, oh, they're all speaking English, but they wouldn't actually be speaking English.
Right.
No, I'm fine with that. That's fine. You just cut out the middleman, and instead of me having to read, it's just translated. I have a special sci-fi earbug in my ear. I got one of the slugs from Farscape.
In my opinion, I think Mel Gibson kind of ruined that for everybody with The Passion of the Christ, a movie that I kind of hate in a lot of ways. But if there's one thing that I really appreciate about that movie is that he had all of the characters speaking in the languages that they would be speaking at that time
what
and
a
at
concept.
that place. I know, and it's really kind of remarkable, and I think he ruined it for everyone else. Every period piece that comes out after that, or a movie set in a country and in a time where they would be speaking an ancient or antiquated version of a modern language. If Mel Gibson can do it, why can't you?
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, there are translators out there. They cost money, but let me tell you, most of the time the money is pretty awful. So if you want to throw some movie money at them, I'm sure they'd be really happy to translate some stuff for you. What I was talking about, though, is not what you're talking about. The language problem that I'm having here when I was talking about the Germanic stuff was that the historical context of it, okay? So stay with me here. Okay. Like the Germanic tribes, they are using modern German in that scene, the barbarians. Most archaic forms of modern German, the most archaic form of modern German was Old High German, which we know was spoken by some tribes in southwest Germany in like the 6th century. But I guess they just thought modern German was good enough for this scene. But my problem with it is that linguistically, because of consonant shifts and stuff in history, modern Dutch would have been way more appropriate for those tribes to be speaking. But I'm saying this because it's annoying to me because it doesn't take that much research to figure it out. Like, to know that the people in this place at this time, if you want to use a modern language, that's fine, but use the appropriate modern language. I'm not a linguist. Like, it's not that, it's just frustrating to me because and I have a lot of problems with this throughout the movie with some of the historical context stuff, because when Ridley Scott was making this movie, he talked about wanting it to be to make a movie that was more historically accurate to the portrayal of ancient Rome than any movie that was ever made before. This is what he talks about.
I'm sorry, give me a second to just laugh at that.
And he hired a fuck ton of historians to be on set during the filming and stuff. And I'm sure during the script writing and everything like that, he hired historians to be a part of this, and I guess he just ignored them or didn't use them. Apparently, at least one of them left during the filming.
I'm not surprised.
And another one asked not to be included in the credits because of all the changes he was making. And they were like, "Don't put my fucking name on this, man. Like, leave me out of this. I want to still be a historian with like some respect behind me by the time this movie is made." That's my problem with it. My problem is that he wanted this to be historically accurate, But then he didn't take the time to do any of the research or to listen to any of the people who did the research for him to make the changes that would have been necessary.
Yeah, I mean, you figured it out in an afternoon, so why couldn't he?
Right.
Right.
Well, or, I'm sure that the historians that he had
probably knew that.
And
He was
didn't
like,
have to
no,
figure it out. They didn't have to use Google.
The audience won't believe that, which seemed to be his mantra
Oh, yes.
when he was combating things that the historians were saying, okay, well, this is something that actually happened and something that existed, and Ridley Scott's like, that's too unbelievable. And they're like, but it happened.
That's what happened in history, man.
Yeah. I mean, Rome was really incredibly advanced for its time. It was way, way ahead of its time. And there's things that if you really dig into historical study about Rome, you'll find stuff that's just unbelievable. I mean, they had indoor plumbing. They had
the
they had a sewage system.
The Colosseum, one of the most famous things that they used to do with the Colosseum the gladiator bouts were, obviously everybody knows about that, but they used to flood the Colosseum. They would flood the Colosseum and they would have ship battles in the Colosseum. That's how advanced they were. That's crazy.
Yep.
How cool would that be to see on screen?
Oh, that would be amazing.
To see an indoor sea battle?
But Jessica, no one would believe it. No one would believe that actually happened.
He said that. He kept saying that no one would believe this historical thing. And it's like, but man, you said you wanted to make a historically accurate ancient Rome movie.
So we've just been introduced to Proximo, who is a gladiator trainer, keeper guy. What is that called?
A gladiator keeper?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's
he has pet gladiators and
right. Well, I mean, historically, there is actually a specific type of person who would keep and train gladiators. They were called Lanistae or Lanistae. Okay. They were owned and trained by Lanistae, and they were kept at what was called a ludus or a ludus. Neither one of those elements are incorporated into the film, and the character of Proximo is actually never mentioned to be a Lanista by trade. I guess that might be what he is, but he seems to be dabbling in a lot of different things that will just bring him money. He mentioned buying a couple of giraffes from a slave trader.
And we see him with a lot of exotic animals and stuff.
He's got a lot of exotic animals.
Though I know, they did use those in gladiator fights, and I guess we're to assume that I guess what Proximo says later is that Marcus Aurelius banned the gladiator fights, and so he had to go out into the middle of nowhere and start them up illegally.
Right.
I guess so. That's why he's got all the exotic animals, is so they can kill them.
We've also been introduced to this character of Juba, who they refer to as a Numidian. Numidia was actually an ancient Berber kingdom in what is now Algeria and a smaller part of Tunisia in North Africa. It doesn't exist anymore, obviously. But yeah, he's played by I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think it's like Jimon Honso or something like that. But he's a pretty famous actor who's been in some really good stuff.
He's fine in this. He doesn't offend me.
He's fine. He doesn't have a lot to do.
No. He's like that sage character in the background who gives words of wisdom and occasionally brings our hero to his greatness by just talking to him.
I think my favorite performance in this entire movie, my favorite character is Proximo.
Proximo?
Yeah, I like Proximo a lot. And strangely, his Oliver Reed, who plays Proximo, famously died 3 weeks before principal photography on this movie finished. And because, of course, he's considered a key character, there was a clause in the insurance coverage on the movie that would have allowed the filmmakers to shoot all of his scenes again with another actor, with the insurers actually footing the cost, which would have been like $25 million just to do that.
Oh, my gosh.
However, most of the actors and crew were exhausted from the punishing schedule, and Ridley Scott did not want to lose Reed from the movie, so the script was rewritten and CGI used to give Reed's character a plausible resolution. There are a few scenes later in the movie where Proximo is actually kind of just copy and pasted from earlier
Previous
parts
scenes.
of the movie. Yeah.
Is the scene where they're escaping?
And he gives him the key.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's one. The scene where he dies. That's another one.
The scene where he dies. I think it's interesting that that's one of the ones you're talking about, because it was that scene specifically that I had a note about Proximo where I was like, man, this guy was an old gladiator, and I know he's old and fat and lazy now. Like, I get that, but I really wanted him in his death scene to be a badass for a second. He wasn't
supposed to die. He's actually the one who's, in the original script, he was supposed to be the one to bury the little figures of Maximus's wife and son in the Colosseum. But yeah, actually, Oliver Reed, it's strange that he ended up being my favorite character and my favorite performance in the movie, because his main motivation for taking this part was because, quote, he fancied a free trip to London to see a couple of shows. Yep. He also said things like he insisted to Ridley Scott that his life was his own after 5 o'clock, and Ridley Scott agreed to it. Like, this guy was just workman. That's it. He went to work. He took this job because he wanted to go to London, and he was off by 5 every afternoon. He gave no fucks.
Wow.
That's kind of amazing that he turns in a performance that I honestly think it's the best performance in the movie. I really do.
Though the writing in this scene right here, where he's giving a speech to his gladiators, doesn't really help prove that point, though.
No. I mean,
because this is one of those moments that I was talking about. Well, it's over now, but where there were like contradicting things in the speeches. In the speech that he was giving, he at one moment in that speech he said, "We can decide how we meet our end," and then later it was followed by, "We are all dead men. Sadly, we cannot choose how." And it's like, man, but you just said we could decide how we meet our end.
Well, he says that actually after he says, "Sadly, we're ultimately dead men, and we cannot, or sadly, we cannot choose how, but we can choose how." Like, he says it immediately after. We can't choose how we meet that end, but we can choose how we meet that end.
And it's just like, if you're not really paying attention, if you're just slightly paying attention, then you're like, this sounds important.
If you're paying attention to this movie like you would, say, a Transformers movie, then it would probably go right over your head.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, yeah, important to listen to the words that come out of his mouth. But then, like, if you actually listen, you're like, what the fuck are you saying?
The moment that Russell Crowe steps away from the guy that pissed his pants before going out into the arena, it's such a kind of weirdly comical moment to me, not because haha he peed his pants, but you're about to step out into an arena and face the most brutal, bloody, terrible kind of fighting that you can engage in. Limbs will be severed, blood will go everywhere. It's going to be terrible. You are facing your mortality, and a guy pees on the ground in front of you, and you step away like, ooh, pee. Really?
Yeah, that's pee-pee. I don't like that.
I don't like pee-pee. And so far, like, and this is something that's kind of strange to me. Up until Maximus's family were murdered, he has this kind of mantra that he says when he's praying and stuff, and he says, "I live only to hold you again." Right? Yeah. I live only to hold you again. I live only to hold you again. I live only. Think about those words. I live only to hold you again. That's it.
And then they're dead.
And then they're dead. And he kind of makes a show of not wanting to train with the big guy. I forget his name, but he's fighting in this battle. He throws down the sword and he gets kind of beat up a little bit by the big guy, one of the big gladiators. And then he's in this battle and now he's fighting, but we don't really know what his motivations are yet, because his motivations, as far as we know as an audience, are gone. Like, his family is dead.
I do have a theory about that. I think that at this point he's fighting because it's a life or death. Maybe it's instinct at this point that he's fighting, but I think he really doesn't care if he lives or dies at this point. But later, I think he makes a decision to live, and I'll tell you when we get there. I just don't think they portrayed it well. I don't think it came across
There's
well.
one moment that it kind of hints at that.
Are you talking about the scene between him and his friend who he's chained
Juba,
to? Yeah.
Where he cuts off his tattoo?
It says, no, that was before now.
Yeah, I know.
We already saw that.
Yeah. I think that's the only hint that we get.
that he doesn't care if he lives or dies.
Well, that he has any kind of motivation at all, because why would he want to cut off his tattoo unless he had a plan or unless he was thinking about something in particular? Like, I know that he feels like he's kind of betrayed by Rome, but I think he also doesn't want to be identified as a soldier anymore. Once Proximo identified him and said one of the Legion and called him a deserter and all that kind of stuff, Juba says to him, is that the symbol of your gods? Won't that make them angry? And he doesn't say anything. He just kind of nods and smiles. Yeah, it'll make them angry. And you get kind of maybe a feeling that it's going to be like a revenge take, which it ends up being. This ends up being a vengeance story. But I think that not having those motivations cleared up in any kind of dialogue or any kind of clear-cut way that tells the audience exactly where his head at is right now, I think I'm probably going to lay the blame at John Logan's feet for coming in and trying to make some of this dialogue and some of this stuff a little bit more nebulous and, harder to penetrate, but without any more thoughtfulness, I think.
Some of the rules to like the gladiator fights in this movie, I don't
understand them either.
Like the one we were just in, we had people chained up together, but only some people were chained together. And some people didn't have chains at all. And, we were real lucky that Maximus got to be chained up to his bestie.
Right.
And I guess you can assume, or we can assume as the audience, that you don't have to kill the person you're chained to. But I guess also if everybody who's not chained up dies, then you don't have to kill anyone who had a chain at all, because the big guy was still alive at the end.
Right, like the battle just kind of ends.
Like they killed all the people who didn't have chains.
So the gladiators that are owned by Proximo are never at any point expected to kill one another.
Right, that is a point that I was going to talk about, because in this movie, Maximus fights only gladiators that he doesn't know. The only other gladiators he fights are men he does not know, who we don't see a face for.
How much more interesting would that be if he had to fight these men that he lives with and he's come,
I don't know. Maybe the audience wouldn't be able to believe it, because that's actually historically what gladiator bouts were.
Of course it is.
Historically, the gladiator bouts, you fought the people you trained with. That's who you fought. It was a show. You were in a school and you trained with the people. I mean, it's like pro wrestling, except you actually kill each other.
What incredible character conflict that would create.
Right, because
oh my God, that's such a missed opportunity.
That's one of the reasons why in reality, gladiator bouts weren't quite, as deadly as they are in the movies, because I think one of the main reasons, of course, the main reason is that gladiators were too expensive. They were too expensive to house and feed and train and school and et cetera, et cetera. And then you lose one and you spend all these years putting money into them, and that sucks. So they didn't want them to die if they could avoid it. But I think one of the other major reasons why gladiator fights weren't so deadly is because they were fighting their fucking friends. They were fighting the people who they lived with and trained with. And so they were probably trained most of the time and probably fought in such a way where they would wound instead of kill. But it's so much more conflict that way.
Oh, it's so much better.
It's so much more conflict. If you're being forced to fight people that maybe you hate a lot of them, but maybe you care about some of them.
You don't really get to know any of the you don't get to know any of them at all who die in this movie.
No, not at all. They're faceless. They're faceless enemies.
Almost literally, they all have helmets on.
Literally, yeah.
Almost literally all of them are wearing some kind of facial protection.
But actually, in history, the gladiators fought the people they trained with. And the other thing is, all the gladiator fights in this movie are it's like random free-for-alls. It's just a ton of different sized guys and different shapes and different weapons and whatever. And actually, real gladiator fights were staged kind of like modern day wrestling and boxing championships, where it was weight classes.
Yeah.
You were fighting people who were about the same weight or size, or in a lot of cases the same social status as you. So whatever.
I don't know. I mean, we're gonna talk about some. There's a couple of other points that I do want to make about historically accurate gladiator battles and how some of the actual historically accurate facts
would have been better thematically.
Much better suited to this kind of movie.
I know what you're getting at.
And actually, the scene that we just left, the scene prior to this, Commodus is talking to Gracchus in the Senate, and Gracchus mentions that the plague has sprung up in the Greek quarter, and they need to do some basic sanitation, and he has to, make the call on it. Commodus, being Caesar now, has to be the one to say, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to clean up the area, and we're going to fix this. Simple fix. It's he frames it in a way. Gracchus frames it in a way that seems like it's just a simple, like, kind of bureaucratic thing where it's like, we just need you to sign off on this thing. And then Commodus starts waxing all philosophical about how now that he's Caesar, he's like, he cuts off Gracchus and he says, no, we're not going to do that thing. I've got a better plan. I'm going to embrace the people. I call it love, and I am their father, and they are my children,
and, it's
and
like,
blah, blah, blah.
What does that have to do with cleaning up the Greek quarter that has plague?
I don't know what the fuck they're disagreeing over. The scene has no motivation behind it,
just
besides
suddenly he's angry.
Yeah, it's just the most basic, like, Commodus is a twerp and the Senate doesn't like him. Like, that's it. There's nothing behind it. It's so empty and facile. It's ridiculous. So we're finally in the Colosseum. We're finally in Rome, I guess. And the scene that we just left, again, Commodus, the reason we're at the Colosseum now is because Commodus has talked to Lucilla, and he insinuated that the dissolution of the Senate, in order for him to rule Rome as a true empire, would come through giving the people a vision, as he calls it. I will translate that as a distraction, this vision of a quote-unquote great Rome, And what he means is the gladiatorial games. His plan is basically to cloud the people's vision with these grand, violent gladiatorial gladiatorial games, so that he can work behind the scenes, dissolve the Senate, and become Caesar of a true empire of Rome, and basically gain all the power. He's power hungry, right?
Right.
So that's his big plan, and the gladiators show up to participate in this, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Now,
and we've got Gracchus and another, either Falco or Gaius. I can't remember. I don't know the other two senators' names.
Frias?
I thought one was Gaius and one was Falco.
Falco? I don't know. Isn't that one of the characters from Star Fox?
It is. We've got Gracchus and Gaius and
Gaius
Falco
from Battlestar Galactica,
and
then Falco from Star.
Yeah.
This would be a way cooler movie if we had
if Star Fox was in it.
Yeah,
Slippy the Frog getting decapitated. I think we all want to see that.
Oh. Yes, we do.
So that the scene between the two senators was basically confirming what was insinuated in the prior scene, and that's that if Commodus does what he's actually going to do, and that is start the gladiatorial games, that it will work, that it's going to cloud the public's vision, and he's going to be able to do whatever the hell he wants. He's going to work behind the scenes and basically just take over Rome.
Well, actually, in history, in real history, the Senate did fear and hate Commodus, but historically, the people and the army as well mostly loved him up until the end, I guess, when he got super town crazy and just went like way overboard. And we'll talk about that later because it would have been a way more interesting movie. But the reason, not in small part, that the people did love him was because of the gladiator stuff. Like, it was entertaining. So that actually is historically accurate, except for the fact that the people don't like Commodus in this movie.
Well, and I think that this series of scenes building up to the starting of the games is the start of a really interesting thematic thread that I don't think the movie ever really pulls together. it doesn't ever really come together in an interesting way. We've had those two scenes. We had the scene of Commodus talking to Lucilla about, giving the people a vision of the great Rome that they want, so that he can, take over Rome, basically. And then you've got the scene of the senators talking where they say if he does this, it'll actually work, followed by a scene of Maximus fighting, very, very defeating, a group of gladiators very handily. And then shouting at the crowd, mocking the crowd for their, bloodthirstiness, I guess, and saying the famous line, "Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?" And then in this scene right here, we've got Proximo talking to Maximus about the fact that the games are going to be reinstated after having been shut down by Marcus Aurelius, some years prior, and they're going to get to go back to the Colosseum and Proximo specifically is going to start being able to make the money that he used to make doing these games, while, Commodus most likely will be, I guess, pulling the strings behind the scenes while the people are distracted. I think that's a really, really great, interesting thematic concept for the movie that the movie doesn't ever get past.
Yep.
They bring it up and they don't do anything with it.
Yep.
And I think one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest drawbacks to this thematic thread is that no one in the film actually speaks for the people.
That's true.
There is no one in this movie that is just a plebeian. There's no commoners that are characters. We've got slaves and gladiators. We've got Proximo, who owns the slaves. We've got the senators. We've got Commodus. We've got the royalty. We've got these people that are at all these different tiers of society that are directly tied to the events that are central to the film's plot.
And we are just the audience members. Like literally in the movie, we're just the audience members who don't have any voice, who don't say anything, who don't do anything.
Exactly.
Who are just watching.
And the movie frames the common folk as idiots. It frames them as sheep who can be very, very easily distracted, and with apparently no outliers that challenge anything.
He screams at them, "Are you not entertained?" And they just keep shouting his name. And you're like, well, that means they're idiots, right? Because he's screaming at them that this is really messed up and you're cheering it on, and they just cheer it on more.
And, so I don't forget by the time we get to the end of the movie, but, the thing that I guess the people, the common folk as a character, their arc, if you can even call it that, wraps up in the scene where Maximus and Commodus fight in the Colosseum, and they basically kill one another. And as their emperor, their Caesar, Commodus, is laying dead in the middle of the Colosseum, all of the people are just watching with their mouths hanging open.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. They have nothing to say about it. No one speaks for the people.
No one does anything.
And the thing is that when I say that no one speaks for the people, I'm also saying that no one speaks for us as audience members. Because we are the audience. We are those people. Exactly. We are ostensibly those people. We are consuming this entertainment.
It's very unlikely that the majority of the crowd that will be taking in this movie will be nobility or a slave or a gladiator. so we're the character that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
The majority of the people who watch this movie are the character that doesn't do anything or say anything or have a representation in the movie.
And I think that, and this is where my biggest problem with the movie comes in, I think that by not fleshing that out, by not wrapping that theme up in an interesting and satisfying way that challenges the audience or teaches the audience or does anything at all with the audience, by falling down, the movie becomes the very thing that it's condemning. It becomes empty entertainment.
True. It does.
And I think that at the end of the day, and that's, when I call this movie kind of middle brow or sometimes low brow, and I call it occasionally exploitative, I mean to say that it is just kind of a popcorn blockbuster action movie that's a little overlong and a little self-important and doesn't really have anything to say. And the things that it attempts to say or pretends to say actually draw your attention to the fact that it is the thing that it condemns.
So while you were talking, we missed the scene
I have to mention the shot that just passed of the sun going down was our movie still identification game. Only one person identified it. It was a really tough one this time. Only one person identified it, and it was AJ Robinson on Facebook, and he didn't have anything he wanted to plug, just his name. So good job, AJ.
Yes, good job. I wouldn't have guessed it. So the scene that we just passed was the scene I was talking about, where I think that's the moment that we're supposed to believe that Maximus makes a decision, makes a change in his character. When he's talking to, I keep forgetting his name, Juba? When he's talking,
the movie never actually says his name.
Okay, well then that's why I keep forgetting it.
We always, when we're researching these movies, when we're watching them in preparation, we always watch them with subtitles on so that we can catch everything that's being said, every last little line. They never actually say his name in the movie.
Yeah, so that would be why. So when he's talking to Juba, they're talking about their families and how Juba wants to reunite with his, and Maximus finally tells him that his family is dead. And then Juba says to him, you will meet them again, but not yet, unless, and he trails off, and then Maximus takes it up and goes, not yet. That unless is very strange to me, unless it was meant to suggest, like, suicide? Do you want to die?
Yeah.
Like, is that, unless, like, are we having a moment here and you're telling me that actually you would rather just die? Which I don't think Juba is, if that is in fact the case, what they're talking about, I don't think Juba is judging him there. I think he's maybe even suggesting that, he'd assist him or whatever, like, that's okay if that's what he wants, and that he would understand it. But the thing is, though, that's the moment where I feel like if Maximus does actually have a change in his character, then that's the moment where I believe he decides that he's going to do something, that he has motivation again. And I want to believe that this character is fleshed out, and therefore I believe that before that moment, he was still kind of okay with the idea of dying. But then he has the conversation with Proximo where he realizes he has an opportunity. He's like, yes, I want to meet the Emperor just like you did. Ha 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 ha.
Right.
And he's like, and by that I mean I want to kill the Emperor. And I think after that conversation, he decides he doesn't want to die. But I think before that, he actually wanted to die, or he didn't care if he died.
Right.
I just don't think they showed it very well, because he was fighting in the gladiator fight really heartily. And we never really got the feeling that he was suicidal.
Right. No, I mean, that never comes across.
Or anything like that. Or
nothing that interesting is in this movie.
Right? But I think that unless that Juba says that is left hanging there, to me, that was the moment where he's saying, unless you do want to die.
I do want to mention, because the line passed in the scene where Maximus in the scene prior to that, when Maximus and Proximo were talking about the reinstating of the games. There is another political slant to this movie that I think is a little bit under the current or under the radar, and I don't jive with it too well. I kind of hate this movie's politics. Specifically, Proximo is talking about how Marcus Aurelius freed him because he won the crowd. Like, he was a very popular gladiator and he won his freedom, basically. And Proximo says to Maximus, quote, "When enough men have died, perhaps you will have your freedom," end quote. And I think that this movie, the happy ending of this movie, is that Maximus, at least in the ring, almost literally kills every single person he encounters. Just an unbelievable amount of bloodshed. And then once there are no more people to kill, he hands over the reins to politicians. And that's the happy ending. to me, it sounds remarkably like the birth of many, 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 many nations that exist on this earth today. Kill until there's no one else to kill, and then hand over the reins to the politicians. And this movie celebrates that.
It's true. It does.
And I think that's pretty fucking shitty.
Well, the other thing that we don't deal with in this movie is that, again, historically, and the only reason I'm being a prude about this and saying historically again and again is because Ridley Scott said he wanted to make the most historically accurate ancient Rome movie that had ever been made. But historically, Commodus is kind of the point that historians reference as like, this is where Rome starts to go down. This is the decline of Rome, and after this, it just gets worse.
He was so much crazier in real life.
Oh my gosh, we need to talk about Commodus.
Like,
but
as crazy as Joaquin Phoenix portrays him in this movie, and he's pretty nuts in this movie.
He's way crazier,
way worse in real life.
History, way more interesting too. But what I'm saying though is that the end of this movie should be ending with Rome looking like things are going down, because you are talking about, and that would play into the theme that you're talking about, but in the correct way, where you're talking about cities, empires built on blood. Well, that's not really a good idea, right? I mean, we shouldn't celebrate that kind of thing like this movie does. And so building an empire on blood, as this movie talks about
How else
doing.
do you build an empire?
Well, I mean, that's
a question for a different conversation.
Different topic.
But,
but what I'm saying, though, is that showing Rome going into its decline after those things have been established makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, after we do all this bloodshed and we have all this horrible stuff happen, and then we show that actually this leads to bad ends, thematically is better.
I think it's a better moral. I think it's a lot more satisfying. I think that it actually dare say how dare you challenge the audience, but I think it actually challenges the audience. I think this movie does any of that.
Well, I mean, the end of this movie has them being like, well, everything's all happy now. We're gonna, I guess the Republic is back or something.
The most provocative thing about this movie is how violent it is. The second most provocative thing is the will they or won't they brother sister fuck. And then somewhere down the line, maybe 8th or 9th most provocative thing is they almost say something about using entertainment as a smokescreen.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that they didn't do that, because that's actually what matters in this movie.
Right.
His line, "Are you not entertained?"
Are you not entertained?
That's the line that this whole movie should be centered around. The entire movie should be circulating around that line and the themes that line suggests.
It's a question, but it's an indictment. The question itself is an indictment of that kind of consumption.
Look at what you're cheering on and how messed up that is.
And then allowing that to be used as a distraction or a smokescreen so that people can pull strings behind the curtains and you're just none the wiser about it. I think that the reason that line became the most famous line of this movie became the most famous line for the wrong reason. I think that when you see in the trailers when he says, "Are you not entertained?" the audience is supposed to go, yes, we are. It's so bloody and violent. And that's the whole fucking point. Like, that's the point, is that you shouldn't be entertained by that. You should be able to think a bit deeper about, the entertainment you're consuming and what, some ulterior motives of that entertainment might actually be. But I mean,
you know what movie does that theme, sadly, so much better than this Best Picture winner?
The Hunger Games?
Yeah.
Yep.
As sad as it is to say.
I'm not a huge fan of the Hunger Games films, but I absolutely agree that thematically
they hit it.
Yeah,
as she hits it. Suzanne Collins hits it.
They are much more sound.
She knew what she was going for, and And she hit it.
And thematically, it's the exact same thing. And that
Right.
And that story
It's about people watching people getting killed and killing each other.
and that story nails it.
Right.
It nails
because it realizes that that's what it's talking about. I won't go into my opinion fully of the Hunger Games and the books and
Maybe
etc.
we should do the movies.
We
someday,
absolutely
yeah.
will. We absolutely will because I have lots to say about it. But and I actually am a fan, like a general, like that's really like a light way to put it. That I'm a fan, and by light I mean it's way more complicated than that, and I actually hate it a lot too. But anyways, though thematically, she knew what she wanted, and she stayed with it, and she hit that point. And this movie, it's like that's the theme that we really should be going for here, and we just glaze over the top. And the thing is that again, Ridley Scott and all his great wisdom, and his faith in the human brain to believe things or not believe things that actually happened in history. Real gladiator bouts back in the day in the Colosseum were used for advertisement.
Yeah, there was product placement.
Right. The gladiators, when they came into the arena...
Or endorsements, rather. Product endorsement deals. They were athletes.
Exactly.
They were just like modern athletes that endorse Wheaties and shit like that.
And when they would come into the arena, when they would first come in, before they'd start the fight, they would promote a product. They would promote whatever product they were endorsed by before they'd start fighting. And all around the arena... all around the Colosseum, there were things that we would, today we would draw a parallel to like modern billboard signs.
Right.
That were product placement. That were selling things. Oh my God.
Like that is such
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Like if you want to explore those themes and those ideas in your movie, I mean, history has already done the work for you.
It already did it.
Yeah.
It already did it for you. You don't even have to write it. You just use the history. And originally, apparently, they were going to use some of that in the movie. And that was one of the things where Ridley Scott was like, people aren't going to believe this.
That's so.
And
that's
so they took it
insane to
out.
me. That's so insane to me because that right there, the idea of, you've got the entertainment used as smokescreen with the politics going on behind, and then that added layer of corruption with, the product placement and time. I mean, what that would really do is that not only would it be historically accurate, but it would tie this kind of entertainment to modern entertainment in a more palpable way that to an audience would draw their eye. I mean, it really is. It's like drawing your eye to a reality or a truth that, the film wants you to come to. And that is that entertainment can be used as a distraction. And I don't know that people would come away from this movie saying, oh, wow, the gladiatorial games are just like modern entertainment. It's just like the Super Bowl. It's just like this or that or whatever. And, so many people watch it and so many people are entertained by it and so many people are influenced by it. And that's the key word there is influence. I don't know that people would come away from this movie with that feeling as it is. But I think that you add that layer, that the historically accurate truth of the product placement in the gladiatorial games, and I think that you have a better chance of catching the audience's eye and tipping them off and making them think, "Hey, what does this remind you of? What does this look like?"
This kind of feels like it's talking about today.
Yeah,
which isn't that the point of?
It is. None of the movie feels particularly relevant.
Dun 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 dun.
But yeah, I mean that's the thing is that this movie does
not.
not.
Ready to see Jack Sparrow now.
This movie doesn't feel relevant to me. I don't think it was relevant when it came out. I still don't think it's relevant, and I think the reason it's not relevant is because it doesn't explore the ideas that it pretends to be interested in. All it would have to do is dig a little bit deeper than it goes and provide something for the audience to chew on, but there's nothing to chew on here. It's all junk food. This is junk food.
So this junk food that we're consuming right now is the recreation of the Second Fall of Carthage, which historically happened the end of the Third Punic War,
right,
like 136 BC. Which this is true. Like they used to do this a lot in, they'd do like the LARPing thing, right, back in Rome, where they'd recreate historical battles, but they'd actually kill each other. They weren't using like Nerf swords. And anyway, so the thing about this whole scene here, there's some weird stuff again historically where it's kind of frustrating, because for a movie that's all about fighting and war and battles and people wearing armor and whatever, they really flub up some of it. This scene specifically, Proximo's men are the Carthaginians, but they have Roman armor on. Okay, and then the people who Proximo's men are fighting are supposed to be the Romans, but the ones who are fighting like Romans are Proximo's men. And like they do the whole shield thing, where they get in formation and they get down with the shields, and they're blocking the chariots and stuff by staying in formation and staying united and stuff together. That's Roman strategy. That's how Romans fought, is that they fought as a unit. They didn't fight individually.
Yeah. You see a similar thing in the movie 300 at the Battle of Thermopylae,
right,
where they create the tortoise shell kind of thing.
Exactly. And so this scene here was kind of, whatever. Maximus actually is a Roman soldier, so I don't think it's that weird that he convinces the people around him to fight like Romans, even though they're supposed to be fighting the Romans, who they don't actually fight like Romans. But the thing that was frustrating with that point, going back in the movie to the battle in the opening battlefield against the barbarians, in that scene, if you recall, Maximus and his army do not use Roman tactics at all. It's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
They're just fighting like one-on-one, just running around, hacking at each other, whatever. In reality, if Roman soldiers had fought like that, they probably, well, for one, if they survived it, then they probably would have been punished severely for breaking formation and not fighting the way that Romans are supposed to fight. But the other thing is that Romans weren't trained to fight like that. They didn't know how to fight like that. And the barbarians, on the other hand, that's what they were good at. Barbarians were good at just running around and hacking people's heads off and fighting one-on-one just very brutally and without organization. And so they would have been totally slaughtered by the barbarians in that opening scene if a bunch of Romans had fought them the way they fought in the opening scene.
This scene right here is kind of interesting because Russell Crowe was apparently really unhappy with the screenplay, and he would rewrite a lot of it to suit his own needs, especially like his own dialogue. And he would frequently walk off set if he didn't get his way. And then in this scene that we just watched, the famous line, "In this life or the next, I will have my vengeance," he initially refused to say it, and he told one of the writers, William Nicholson, "Your lines are garbage, but I'm the greatest actor in the world, and I can make even garbage sound good."
Wow. What was the line?
The line was, what is it? In this life or the next, I will have my vengeance.
I mean, doesn't sound that bad.
It doesn't sound that bad to me either.
It's just whatever.
It's kind of standard action movie type stuff.
Right,
but
exactly.
It doesn't sound particularly bad.
No.
Yeah. There are much worse lines in the movie, I think. But the ego on that, can you imagine coming up against that? Someone who's just like, "I'm the greatest actor in the world," and go fuck yourself.
I'd just be like, "Yeah, man.
Sure you are."
Sure. Greatest actor in the world.
Actually, when in this scene, when Commodus he actually arrives in the Colosseum, and then Lucius, Lucilla's son, comes out after him. He asks, he tells Maximus that Lucius insists that Maximus is Hector reborn, and then Commodus asks Lucius, "Or was it Hercules?" The real Emperor Commodus historically believed that he himself was Hercules
Yes.
reborn.
And he like made statues and stuff of
Oh,
himself.
did he? I didn't know that.
He made statues of himself where he looked like Hercules.
Now, one of the things that one element that I do like about this movie is the idea that even the dumb, sheeple can influence the supreme leader of the land in this way.
I do like the line that
he
follows this about
he aspires
how
to be a titan or a tyrant rather. Commodus aspires to be a tyrant. He wants to be a dictator. He wants to be supreme emperor, but he's still nascent at this point, and the fact that the people that Maximus has won the crowd and the crowd wants him to live, he doesn't want the people to turn on him because he knows that will be the end of his pulling the strings and turning Rome, to be his,
right,
and his alone.
And I do like the line that follows it where she, I think it's Lucilla who says it later, where she says the you showed them, or she says something about in that moment a slave had more power than the emperor, and
right.
and that's a nice touch, I think,
yeah.
and thematically, like, it works for once.
We're not totally shitting all over this movie, but just mostly.
So the thumb thing, do you want to talk about the thumb thing?
I know that's historically inaccurate, but you can go ahead and say it.
So the thumb thing where he Commodus does like the thumbs up for
or thumbs down,
living. Yeah. So the thumb thing is a point of contention because it seems there may be some agreement that perhaps that the movie has it backwards, and that in the movie they use thumbs up for let him live and thumbs down for make him die. Historically, it probably was the other way around. Thumbs down probably was supposed to symbolize like sticking your sword in the ground or sheathing your sword.
Right.
And so thumbs down was live and thumbs up was die. But
I heard something different.
But, well, actually, there's a lot of contention about it because in records and stuff, they never actually say what is death or life. They use the phrase turning the thumb. They say he turned the thumb and then the person died or lived. And they never actually say whether he turned the thumb up or down or whatever. Also, a lot of like reliefs and stuff where we can see pictures of this gesture being done portray other various gestures to symbolize it, like the thumb in the fist or to the throat to show death,
right, or
a fist closed with two fingers extended to show life.
Yeah, I had read that an extended thumb was life, or is that right? Extended thumb was death, and then the thumb tucked within the fist was life.
There's a lot of contention about it because, like I said, in the records they just use the phrase turning the thumb in the documents, the historical documents that are cited when we talk about this thumb thing. So the movies, actually he's got some leeway because even historians aren't totally sure, but I'm just going to go with the movie is wrong because they're wrong about so many other things that...
Ridley Scott, apparently, the thing that he didn't want to make was a cliche sword and sandals epic of people, from ancient Rome, of people lounging around and eating grapes and drinking from goblets and shit like that. We've said it, but he intended to create a more realistic vision of ancient Rome, a more historically accurate vision of ancient Rome, and what he ended up making was a very, very historically inaccurate vision of ancient Rome that doesn't actually have anyone lounging around drinking from goblets or eating grapes or anything.
When I think of that vision of Rome, I think of the TV series Rome.
Oh, yeah.
Which I absolutely love, so Ridley Scott can suck it because I would have liked that better, I think.
The role of Maximus was originally filled by Mel Gibson, which seems like a really Mel Gibson-y role.
It seems like a Mel Gibson-y role.
I feel like this would be like Braveheart Part 2.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like it would be that same kind of thing?
So.
I don't love Russell Crowe in this. I think he does a fine job. I think that the script does him more disservice like as a character than his performance. I believe he actually won Best Actor for this performance, maybe, which is kind of strange to me. I think that's right. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I would be interested to see Mel Gibson in this role.
So random trivia about Lucilla's costumes.
Right.
The costumes, like I said, as I understand, they're not really historically accurate, especially in some of the armor scenes and stuff like that, like helmets and things like that. Apparently there are some problems with that. I don't know a lot about that kind of stuff, and I didn't spend too much time researching it, so I'm not going to try to talk like I do. I think the costumes, whether or not they're historically accurate, I think they're pretty, and I think they're well designed. They're aesthetically pleasing, so I'm happy with them. But apparently a lot of the costumes, many were made with real gold thread and with lots of expensive fabrics. Jewelry was handcrafted by a famous English jeweler, and apparently the jewelry that Lucilla wears is true to the time, from sources that I've read. But
really?
This actress, Connie Nielsen,
yeah,
is that right? So all of the jewelry was, like I said, handcrafted by this famous English jeweler, except for one piece that she has, and I didn't know this till after I had watched it the last time, so look for it if you can anytime you see her on screen. But she apparently has a ring. There's a signet ring, and this was the only piece in the movie that she added herself to the collection of what Lucilla wears. And it was a ring that she found in an antique store, and it's a 2,000-year-old ring that she just found in an antique store. And she felt like it connected her to the part because someone from this time...
I wonder how much she paid for it.
I mean, she's a famous actress, so there's no telling.
She's not that famous.
Well, she has more money than I do,
that's definitely true.
But anyways, though, I think that's pretty cool. That's neat, right?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the Colosseum, something interesting about the Colosseum, there was a replica of about 1/3 of the Colosseum that was built in Malta to a height of 52 feet, mostly from plaster and plywood, and the remainder of the building was added in digitally, which I think looks like doo-doo shit. It actually took several months to build at a reputed cost of $1 million.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
We talked about how the costumes are really good. A lot of the production design is really good in this movie. The costume designer Janty Yates and her team created more than 10,000 costumes for the cast and extras. That's a lot of costumes. Yeah.
I think they look great. Again, and when I'm picking at all the historical stuff in this movie, really the only reason I'm picking at it is because Ridley Scott was so serious about saying he wanted to make the most historically accurate ancient Roman movie. And that's the only reason I'm really picking at it, because I don't expect movies to be like on the nose historically. For instance, I'm a big fan, like I said, of Rome, the TV series. I'm a big fan of The Tudors. I'm a big fan of shows like that, knowing that they twist things when they want to twist them, that it's not all actually the way it was, because if you did it actually historically accurate all the time, then, well, for one thing, in Rome we wouldn't get to say fuck all the time, and that would take away half of the dialogue. So but also, like, it probably wouldn't be as interesting, and even if it was as interesting, it'd be really complex and hard to follow, and I mean, like, you wouldn't be able to get all the character stuff that you get, because you wouldn't be able to mess with it. You'd have to fit it into a mold instead of shaping it into what you want it to be. I am totally fine with them doing what they want to do historically in a movie, changing things to make it be a better story. The problem is that it's not historically accurate, and it's not a better story because of the changes they made.
This guy, the actor here, David Hemmings, his eyebrows are his own. Those crazy pointed ass eyebrows.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's unfortunate for him.
I think that's something to be proud of.
We have very, very differing opinions on facial hair, but
I guess eyebrows count. They count as facial hair, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hair on your face, so that would count.
So right now we've been talking over a lot of what's going on, but to be honest, not a whole lot happening.
Right, like that's again the problem. I mean, when there's a gladiator fight, then at least it's interesting because there's a gladiator fight going on, but
Right.
when it's just them plotting stuff, and we're about to hit a stretch here. After this last one here, we're going to hit a stretch of just plotting for like 20 minutes, and that was the hardest part of the movie for me to get through. It's like, oh, okay, well, now we're going to do this. No, wait, someone got kidnapped. Nope, okay, change of plans. Now we're going to do this. Okay,
So
let's talk some more.
the character that they've introduced here for this scene is an undefeated gladiator by the name of Tigris of Gaul. And he's introduced to fight Maximus. He's and apparently summoned by Commodus himself. Has come out of retirement of like 5 years or something like that. And they call him the only undefeated gladiator.
Wouldn't that be...
Which is really strange to me because wouldn't Proximo also be undefeated?
Wouldn't any gladiator who's not dead be undefeated?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess that's not true actually in the way gladiator
Battles actually
were, but in the way we've seen it in the movie thus far,
yeah, exactly.
you either win or you die.
Yeah.
So
That's right. In the Game of Thrones, you... Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Don't talk about things that make more sense.
The guy here, the guy that's playing this Tigris of Gaul character, was apparently originally cast as Lou Ferrigno. Do you know who Lou Ferrigno is?
I know the name.
He's a bodybuilder who probably most
yeah.
famously played the Incredible Hulk in the original TV series.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But apparently this actor here by the name of Sven Ole Thorsen,
that is a name that goes
hell
with
of
this
a
body.
Nordic name, yeah. He had been lobbying really hard for the part, and they gave it to him instead, apparently.
Look at these angry kitties.
He not only plays this character Tigris the Gaul or Tigris of Gaul, but he also doubles as one of the spectators in this same battle. So not only is he fighting the battle, but he's watching himself fight the battle.
That's cool. That's cool for him.
Yeah, you mentioned the angry kitties. There were actually 5 tigers that were brought in for the sequence in the arena when Maximus is fighting this dude.
Man, they pissed off those kitties.
Yeah. Well, actually, a veterinarian armed with a tranquilizer gun was in attendance for the entire length of shooting, and for safety's sake, Russell Crowe was actually kept at least 15 feet away from the tigers at all times.
Boo.
I don't know, there's a couple of shots where they very obviously kind of stick tigers into shots where the tigers were not actually.
Yeah, like that one we just saw.
That shot right there in particular of the tiger jumping across.
Jumping around, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty weird looking. But yeah, I mean they I guess historically they did use animals in gladiator battles.
Absolutely, they did.
Actually, in the original screenplay, there was supposed to be a scene where Maximus fights a rhinoceros.
That would have been cool.
That would have been awesome as fuck.
Rhinos are scary.
Yeah, they're super scary. But apparently, they couldn't do it with the CG didn't look good enough, and it would have been too.
Man, how do you fight a rhinoceros?
Yeah, it would have been too dangerous. Like they're too difficult to train.
Yeah, I would
imagine
expect that
rhinos.
Rhinos are pretty difficult. I mean, tigers are just big kitties, so you just give them some frisky snacks, and they're probably going to do what you want.
As I understand it, large cats are not hard to train.
That's what I understand too.
They're really smart.
I understand that it would be really awesome to have a large cat as a pet in my house too. So
there are people who live with cheetahs domestically.
See, doesn't that sound like a great idea?
I have the internet, and I've seen it.
I just want to snuggle one. Oh, God.
Is that what it makes you think of when you see, like, this bloody, terrible battle with tigers just about to kill people? I think one of the tigers dies.
Oh,
it does.
No, it's dead.
One of the tigers died. Look at that. Look at that terrible fake tiger.
That poor kitty.
Yeah, well.
That's the saddest part of this whole movie.
Is it?
We lost a tiger's life.
You know what my favorite part of this movie is?
Is it the part when he finds his wife and son dead and he like snots all over their feet?
Oh no.
Man, that I was
That's
eating.
a better answer. I was going to say the credits, but anyway.
I was eating during that scene and I I had to put my sandwich down.
You're like
Just
too much,
like, nope,
too much snot on the
nope.
feet.
I am done right now. He was slobbering everywhere. And speaking of that scene, going way back to there, did you ever watch the TV show Spartacus at all?
No, I did not.
I think I tried to get you to watch it with me, and you didn't. Multiple times.
No, I didn't.
I haven't.
I know it's supposed to be pretty good. I just don't. I don't know. I don't really have an interest in it.
I haven't seen more than the first couple episodes, and that has nothing to do with how fun it was. It mostly has to do with I was really hoping you were going to watch it with me, and I keep kind of waiting for you to give in and say that you'll watch it with me. But because I really enjoyed the first couple episodes, but the beginning, as I understand, this movie has a lot of similarities to the 1960 Spartacus movie.
Yeah.
Which
by Stanley Kubrick.
Don't think I've seen. I don't know. Maybe I have.
I have. It's been a long time ago, but
if I saw it, it was a very,
I think I was
very
still
long
in
time
college
ago.
when I saw it. Yeah.
Maybe I've seen it on TV or something like that before, but I don't remember much about it, so I can't talk about the similarities. However, I will talk about the Spartacus TV show in the opening and how like it starts off exactly the same way with a great war hero who only wants to go home and daydreams of his home all the time, and that's his only motivation for doing anything is he just wants to get back to his family. And then he gets back to his home, but his family gets killed, and then he gets kidnapped and becomes a gladiator, and then gets revenge.
Yeah. It is also a
right?
vengeance story.
Isn't that exactly what Spartacus is? I mean, I haven't watched more than the first couple episodes, but I know it opens exactly the same way. I mean, it's not exactly the same way. Like, there are differences.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He gets to be with his wife a little bit before she gets killed. But anyways, though, like, that is that like a cliche, like, ancient Rome story then? Is that what that is?
I mean, I don't think it's. No, it's not that it's cliche. Well, yeah, okay, maybe. It is
okay,
cliche.
like a cliche, like modern retelling of ancient Rome stories, because actual ancient Roman stories don't do that.
Well, I mean,
so
I mean, you see shades of that in not only ancient literature, but the way ancient literature has influenced contemporary literature. You see shades of that in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker's family is, burned to a crisp by the Empire.
Yeah.
And then when he's got no one left to stay home for, then he leaves and joins the rebellion to fight the Empire. And it's not quite... of course, Star Wars isn't framed as a revenge story, but with just that one extra element of he's getting revenge against the Empire or getting revenge against Darth Vader or some person specifically, if they had framed it a little bit more like that, then it's basically the same thing. But I think it's got shades of that, and sure, lots of stories.
they start a lot of similar feeling video games like this too. What's the one I'm thinking of with
God of War?
Yeah, God of War.
Isn't God of War like that?
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure it starts off exactly... Well, I mean, he doesn't become a gladiator, but
Right, yeah.
starts off exactly the same way with his family being murdered. It's like this easy way where you can be like, here's somebody who's really, really skilled in killing people, but they're a good person who doesn't actually want to kill people because the only thing they actually want to do is be with their family, which means they're a good person. They're killing people because they're in a war and because they have to, but actually they're just trying to get back to their family and protect their family. But then when their family dies, it gives the writer, I mean, I guess the idea is that it gives the writer free rein to do whatever they want with that character morally, and he's still a good guy no matter how many people he brutally murders who are innocent, because we already established him as a good character. It's like, no, he didn't learn these skills because he wanted to. They were forced upon him by the world. Right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, we do that a lot, I think. And I think it's kind of cheap.
Oh,
I think it's also kind of cheap to...
I don't think this movie brings anything super interesting to that kind of conventional storytelling formula. I think it is... The story structure is a means to an end, which is basically just cool, violent action scenes that are bookmarked.
Oh, here's a corrupt politician. This one's
Oh,
corrupt.
he's the corrupt one. Okay, he's the one.
So we see one corrupt one.
Sure. Yeah, so
I don't remember what
I don't know.
his name is.
You know, I think that, like I said, the story structure is a means to an end, which is his name is pretty funny.
The guy from Star Fox.
Right.
The bird.
I'm just gonna
Not the annoying one.
I'm gonna call him Senator Slippy from now on.
No, that's the one we don't like.
Right, he's corrupt.
Right, but his name is actually Falco.
Oh,
though,
okay.
Right?
Do a barrel
Isn't
roll.
it?
Yeah.
Barrel roll. I can't. I'm trying and I'm mashing the buttons and it won't do it.
So, yeah. Anyway, I've got some interesting trivia to read through, since this movie is just kind of plotting. Like this was something that I was afraid of. This movie has a lot of filler in it. There are lots and lots of scenes where they go over the same points over and over and over again, where they talk about the same thing.
And don't actually say anything, though?
And don't actually say anything, but like there's lots of series of scenes where they reveal one little tiny part of the big puzzle, and the next scene will reveal another little tiny part, and the next scene will reveal another tiny part, and you'll have like 3 or 4 scenes lined up back to back, and by the time you get to the end of those, you're like, okay, now I kind of understand what they're talking about, instead of just, for economy of storytelling, just putting all of that into one scene. There's lots and lots of scenes like actually, I kind of like this series of scenes, but it is indicative of this problem that I'm saying. I mentioned it before, the scene where Commodus hints at the gladiatorial games to Lucilla, and then it goes to Proximo and Maximus talking about those games, and you get a little bit more of that information, and then you get a little bit more, and you get a little bit more. And I think the reason I like that series of scenes is because thematically it's the richest thing we get in the movie.
Yeah.
But story-wise,
and it kind of makes you think for a second they're going to do something interesting.
Like, oh my God, they're going to say something. No, they're not. That's all they say. That's it. Those 4 scenes. That's it. And then, but I guess economy of storytelling wise, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have scenes back to back to back that just talk about, that dance around the point nebulously until you kind of land on something that the audience can relate to or understand. It's very strange. And the movie does that at several points. And it's part of why this movie feels too fucking long.
So
that's why I feel like, there's a lot of fluff in this that we've got just kind of fucking talk through.
So we have a character here that not here right now, but we were dealing with him a second ago. His servant, Cicero. Cicero, his servant. I actually want to know more about this character. I mean, clearly he's stayed with him.
He's got a history. He's got scars on his face and stuff.
What happened to his face, man? His face is all messed up. And I want to know what he went through to get here, to get back to Maximus. And all we get is that he delivers some messages for him and then gets killed for it. And that's the only thing we get. And it's really disappointing because like when he came back, I was like, oh man, that's his servant from before, that all he had to do was like, his servant was like getting out the sword and he was ready to defend Maximus, or like come out and bring him the sword so Maximus could defend himself or whatever. And Maximus, all he's got to do is just give him the nod and just be like, no, it's okay. And his servant was like, he knew him that well. Like they had that deep of a bond that he was like, okay, I'm going to let you do this even though it might kill you. Mm. And it was this cool moment there. And then we have him come back and it's this cool moment because his face is all messed up and you're like, man, he went through hell to get here. And nothing. We know nothing about what happened. We know nothing about him.
Nope. Nothing at all. And he meets a really kind of...
really sad end.
Really sad and anticlimactic end. It is a little shocking, though. You're just like, oh, wow.
It's like, wait, whoa,
the
we're
army
killing
was
him
on top
already?
of it. Yeah.
Really? Wow, that sucks. Okay.
Maybe it had the intended effect on you as an audience member. I think it kind of worked on me a little bit. Like, because when it happened, I'm just like, oh, my God.
Oh,
but it does feel like he didn't really get his due as a character.
I mean, I guess you're right. Maybe that was the intended effect. But what I'm saying, though, is that it was a character I was actually interested in. I don't care about these politicians. This guy here, I don't care at all. No cares.
I don't really buy that. Like, maybe it's his face, or maybe it's just the fact that he's part of the Senate or he's a politician. But this movie frames him as a good guy.
Gracchus?
Yeah, they frame him as a good guy, but I don't know why. I just can't. I don't see him as a good guy.
Yeah,
I see him as just like a guy that's after his own ends or something. Mm-hmm. Like I don't see him working for the people in a way that makes me say, okay, he really cares about what he's doing. He cares about democracy. He cares about, justice and all of those things. I just kind of see him working behind the scenes to his own ends, just like Commodus is doing.
Right.
And I don't know, like I don't really care for his character all that much. So at the end of the movie, when Maximus instructs him and says, give the power back to the Senate, there will be no more emperor, blah, blah, blah. I don't really feel happy about it.
I thought the ending to this scene was okay, where he's talking to Maximus and Proximo are talking, and they're talking about Proximo's like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know which side to be on. And Maximus is like, trust me, I'm going to kill Commodus. Believe me, I'm going to kill him. And Proximo's like, why would that benefit me whatsoever? Because if he's the guy who's letting these gladiator fights happen, and that's how I make my money, and you kill him and then my money's gone. Like, why would I? Yeah. And when the scene was going on, I was like, that's a good point. How are you going to back out of this hole that you just dug yourself, movie? And then they actually do, because Maximus, the line that backs out of the hole is he's like, Commodus is the man who killed the man who freed you.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, nice point. Yeah, nice point. That is good. That you just won. You just did it. You backed out of the hole, you dug, movie. That's good. There are glimpses in this movie like that. There are glimpses like that.
Of okay writing.
Of good writing. Yeah. It is. It's not just okay. That's good writing.
Yeah.
They dug a hole that I thought they couldn't back out of, and then they backed out of it. They got out of it. And that's good. And like I said, there are other scenes throughout this movie, like what was the one I mentioned before, where there was another line I really liked. I don't remember what it was that I had said before that I really liked, but there's also the line where he says he must kill your name before he kills you.
Right.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice thematic concept right there, that the idea of a person, and they sure like to talk about the idea of Rome,
sure.
the idea of a person.
The concept of a person, the concept of an idol is more important than the person, the human being.
Right. He can't just kill Maximus, because that doesn't do it. The people are, then he's a martyr, and then it's worse.
Well, it's also about that illusion and that vision and what the people see, what's in front of their faces and the smoke screen. And I think that identity and, specifically like idolatry, but not an idolatry in the religious sense, but making an idol, like idolizing a person. Mm-hmm. When you idolize a person, you create or you see a particular shape or image of that person, but not necessarily the human being. I don't think that the audience empathizes with Maximus, and by audience I mean the Colosseum audience. And I think the Colosseum audience actually empathizes with Maximus on a human level. They empathize with him on an admiration level.
Right.
Where he's an idol. They don't see him as a person. He's a concept. He's a thing. He does something for them. Right?
Right. Which, I mean, again, I hate bringing it up again, but like in the Hunger Games, that's the whole point of Katniss Everdeen, is she becomes the idea of something. And Maximus ties, the reason why it's relevant to bring that up is because, again, the Hunger Games actually hits that point. They hit the point of, we're going to talk about entertainment and the negative things that it can do. And
I think this movie pretty well does the win the crowd thing. Like
they
Katniss
do.
Does. Yeah.
They do. But, which, is interesting in the Hunger Games, because the point is that Katniss sucks at winning the crowd. Or that she at least believes she won't be able to do that. But like in this movie, the problem is that they have all of the pieces and they don't use them. Maximus is the idol. He is this idea of something that the people can get behind, like Katniss Everdeen is, and eventually brings about revolution or whatever. That's what he's supposed to be. And I guess he sort of does it by the end.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, but actually
Sorta.
the only thing he does is just kill Commodus. The people don't revolt and do anything.
No.
Katniss Everdeen becomes a symbol, and she becomes this idea that eventually incites the people to revolt and to rebel and to make a change. Which is, I think, the point that they wanted Maximus to be, to make, to do, but he doesn't. The people don't do anything.
Yep.
It's very sad that I'm having to compare this best picture winner to the Hunger Games,
to the adaptation of young adults.
Some mediocre young adult novels,
right?
And
that at least got something right?
That are just battle royale with white people.
Don't forget about Rue.
Oh, that's true.
Well, they kill her, but
yeah,
because of course they do. So over the course of the gladiatorial scenes, I can't say that word. Gladiatorial. I want to say gladiatorial. But
gladiatorial.
That's gladiatorial. Over the course of the gladiatorial scenes, Russell Crowe broke bones in his foot and his hip and injured both tendons. So he really gave it his all.
I guess he did.
He really did. I also apparently during filming, Russell Crowe became friends with Richard Harris, OG Dumbledore.
That's cool.
However,
I'd want to be friends with OG Dumbledore.
However, it was the opposite with Oliver Reed, who took an instant dislike to Crowe and at one point challenged him to a fight. So to some old fisticuffs, I guess. Can you imagine Proximo and Maximus just going at it, just rolling in the mud?
Awesome. I hate this scene, by the way.
Yeah, this
is maybe my number 2 most hated scene, coming second only to the hug. The hug at the beginning of the...
Your faults as a son were only my failures as a father.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to do it. This kind of... The kiss, the super romantic Hollywood movie kiss between Maximus and Lucilla... feels like it negates all of that shit at the beginning of the movie where he says repeatedly, I live only to hold you again. I live only to hold you again.
Unless, of course, you die and then there's another lady around who I might just want to put it in.
And he's just
then, I live only to hold you again, and also...
My wife is dead. So...
that makes me an eligible bachelor.
I don't know, it's like for just a second, his dick allows him to forget that he's trying to get revenge on the Emperor of Rome
for murdering his wife and
for
child.
Murdering the love of his life and his kid. That, I mean, like, he obviously was head over heels for his wife. The way he talked about her, it was obviously a great love, even though she has no lines in the movie or
and we
no
know nothing about her.
Speak up.
That's fine. It's really hard to get behind that one. Okay, for instance, Spartacus, the TV show, you get some time with him and his wife. It's not a lot, but you get some time with him and his wife, and you feel it. You see him fuck, and you're like, oh man,
that's real.
You guys are really in love with each other, passionately, deep in love. And
balls deep in love.
And like you're behind it, right? And then when she gets killed, you're really upset about it.
Should we say spoilers for Spartacus? You do this every week. You spoil some shit every week. The spoilers for the movie that we're talking about is to be expected. You need to be careful. You're going to piss somebody off.
I'm sorry to whoever I've pissed off. I really apologize. So anyways, though, but that's like we get some time with her. We care about her.
Oh, these two people on screen.
Also, I already talked about her dying.
I'm sorry.
Earlier.
Oh, did you? I wasn't listening. The two people on screen, the Joaquin Phoenix and
Story of My Life.
And Spencer Treat Clark, both appear in different M. Night Shyamalan films. Isn't that fun? What do you know? Which one Joaquin Phoenix appears in?
Signs.
Signs. Do you know which one the little boy appears in?
I don't know. No.
It's
I don't know
Unbreakable.
what little boy this is.
He's Bruce Willis's son
Oh,
in
okay.
Unbreakable. Yeah.
That's your favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Shyamalan.
I think it is. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but my memory says that it is my favorite. But it might change. We need to do it for Popcorn Poops. I think Unbreakable would be a good one.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
I know you. What do you like? Signs?
I really do like Signs.
Boo.
And I really like oh my god.
The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I really love
You
The
like
Sixth
The
Sense.
Village too.
I
Which
have
Joaquin
only
Phoenix is
seen it
also in?
like once, I think, but I remember really
sucks.
enjoying it.
It sucks.
But I love Signs, and I have seen that more recently, and I still love Signs, and you can just suck it. So
Let's talk about OG Dumbledore again. So Richard Harris would frequently ignore any newly rewritten scenes as he couldn't be bothered to relearn his lines. What is up with all the divas on this movie? You've got Oliver Reed, who's just like, I'm going to be off by 5, and I'm only taking this movie because I want to go to London for free and see some shows. And then you've got Russell Crowe, who's like, I'm the greatest fucking actor on the planet, and I can say any garbage line and make it sound good. And then Richard Harris is just like, no, I'm not going to learn your new fucking lines. I'm too busy drinking. I don't know. Was he a drunk?
I don't know.
I'm
What
not
did
sure.
what did OG Dumbledore do?
He was a knitter. He knitted. I don't know. I'm just making that up.
Okay, I was like, do you really know some weird trivia here?
Actually, of course, Richard Harris, who plays Marcus Aurelius in this movie, was originally set to play Commodus in The Fall of the Roman Empire from 1964, but apparently left the film due to artistic differences with director Anthony Mann and was replaced by actor Christopher Plummer. So that's kind of fun.
Let's can we talk about Commodus? Oh no! Oh man, we missed my favorite
by the
line.
way, we're about to see that is not real Oliver Reed. The shot that we just saw of Oliver Reed is not actually him. None of this is actually him. In fact, one of the last scenes we see with Proximo.
Oh, this isn't him?
No, this isn't him, and even this right here, this is not Oliver Reed. This is CG copy and pasted from earlier scenes.
Wow. I mean, it's not that bad, though.
No, I don't think it looks that bad. You can kind of tell, but only if you were looking for it.
Yeah.
I think only if you were looking for it could you really tell.
It like I said earlier, it makes sense to me. I kind of had like a complaint before where I was sort of like,
oh, there's the pirate song again.
yes, this is. I swear to God, Jack Sparrow is gonna just like come around the corner, drunk. And
Where's the rum?
Anyways, though, before I was going to complain about how Proximo, I really kind of wanted him to fight at the end. I wanted him to be like that old gladiator and show us that he was a gladiator, man.
It's a tease, like a
gladiator who won until he was free.
Yeah, the end of Proximo's story, although it was created out of a necessity, like they had to do it that way. The way they created it is kind of a tease, right? Where he finds his old gladiator sword that's got his name on it, and
right. And the thing is that I can believe that he would be too old and out of shape to actually do anything, but I can't believe that those instincts wouldn't come back to him in a life or death moment, and that he wouldn't, take a few swings and fight till he died.
I would have
right?
liked to see that, but that would have been, I think, unrealistic.
Right, I know.
I mean, I actually think it could have been done if they had used, because they use body doubles and stuff like that. Had they just used a body double and had him take a few swings in the dark and in the shadows where his face was, kind of covered or obscured by shadow.
This moment here.
This right here.
It's his wooden sword that he picks up.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
But still, whatever, though, it's still... this moment, I want him to just have he just stands there. And to me, I can't buy that. I can't buy that a gladiator who fought until he won his freedom would just stand there and wouldn't at least take a few swings, Whatever. Anyways, we missed my favorite line, which was when Commodus was telling the story to Lucius, to his nephew.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and right before he tells the story, in which he's talking about their ancestors, and he talks about their ancestors, one of them betraying another one and whatever, and obviously it's pointed at his sister betraying him, and it's the moment where we get the reveal that, oh, he knows his sister has been plotting behind his back with Maximus. Right before he tells the story to Lucius, he's like, I'm going to tell you a story tomorrow night. And then he proceeds to tell the whole story.
That's right, he does.
And I'm just like, what? No, wait.
Tomorrow I'll tell you this story about the boy who did this and this and that and this and that.
And said this, and while he was doing this, he did that and this. And I'm like, no, you promised it was going to be tomorrow night. Oh, man.
Uncle Commodus, you suck.
Now I got to listen to it now. I thought this scene was over.
I hate your stories.
Oh.
You smell like drinking. So, anyway.
So, can we talk about the real Commodus? The historical Commodus?
Yeah, we can.
So, he was assassinated in...
I guess that's a good thing that we're talking about him now, because we're about to get it to the last scene.
Yes.
We're pretty close.
He was assassinated in 192 for good reason, because he was freaking crazy. He was obsessed with blood sport, and toward the end, he was killing exotic animals regularly. Apparently, I read some statistics where, like, apparently there was a time where he was killing 100 lions a day and stuff like that. I mean, that sounds impossible for me to believe.
Yeah, that's nuts.
But, I mean, maybe it was true. I didn't double check my citations, but anyways, he would order Roman citizens. Another really crazy one that I read was that he would order Roman citizens who, for whatever reason, were missing their feet, like whether it was because of illness or war or whatever, and he would order those people to be tethered together so that he could club them to death in the arena pretending they were giants.
Wow.
He would participate in the gladiatorial bouts a lot, but he would often do so in the most pitiful ways, where he would go up against frightened spectators that he'd pull out of the audience, or he would go up against animals while he was standing on a platform raised above them, and he would just like throw spears at them or whatever.
Actually, the line delivery that he just gave for "Am I not merciful?" when he shouts at her, that was improvised.
Really?
And Connie Nielsen did not expect it to happen.
I mean, it looked real.
Yeah,
it looked good.
Yeah. So his performance isn't totally shit.
No, it's not. I don't think it is. I mean, besides the hug scene. But anyways, though, so apparently he even did some of his gladiator stuff. He would come out naked and do it.
That's crazy.
He was like a super crazy person, and
he was known as the Gladiator Emperor.
Right.
That was like his nickname.
But my whole thing is that, I mean, that all of that stuff would have been so much more interesting.
Exactly. Like, if you make him as crazy as he was in history, that's an amazing, interesting, nutty character that you can put in your movie, but instead he's just kind of run-of-the-mill power-hungry.
He is.
It's very, very
and like
standard
that like that slightly insane thing where it's
like a little bit there's
something's wrong with him, something's a little off.
There's a shot of him earlier in the movie. There's glimmers and hints of what Joaquin Phoenix could have done with the because I think Joaquin Phoenix as an actor could have cranked up the crazy to an insane level. I know he could have.
I like Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix spent like 2 years convincing everyone that he was crazy in real life, and made a documentary about it and pretended to be a rapper, all just for a joke. That, I mean, he convinced everyone that he was crazy for real. I think that he could turn up the crazy in this movie and make a kind of historically accurate Commodus that would be a really powerful, memorable screen villain. But he's just kind of run of the mill. He's kind of cliched,
like
even
maybe some
tropey?
like you get the idea that maybe something's a little wrong with him, maybe something's a little off, and he's definitely incestuous, which that usually triggers something.
It's just really weak sauce. Like there's not really anything
like
to
I
him.
said, I mean, I think what would have been awesome for this movie is to have it be focused on the theme that it wanted to be focused on, centered around that "are you not entertained" line. Center the whole movie around that line and the message of that line, and throw in all the stuff about the advertising and the publicity and product placement, and the idea of gladiators as idols, as sports idols, and of people being blind to the things that their government is doing because their government is in control of the media and their government is blinding them.
And on a character level and a characterization level, really play with the concept of what an idol or an icon is as an image versus
what they
real
actually
human
are
struggles
as a human
are.
being.
Like, yeah.
And then throw all that in there in the mix of having...
at that point, you're playing with the concept of celebrity.
Right.
Like, all of that stuff could be folded into this.
Is folded into the concept of media and entertainment easily. And so do all of that set to this backdrop of an insane emperor who's doing stuff like tethering disabled people together and beating them to death because he's pretending they're giants and that he's Hercules. And he's coming out to fight naked in the gladiator arena. And he's the one in charge. Put all of that media stuff in the same movie as that and like tie it all together somehow, and it would just be fantastic. You wouldn't be able to stop watching it, and it would tie in thematically. Some of the other stuff, Commodus was only 18 when his father died.
Oh wow.
In real life, in real history. Lucilla was one of more than one sister that he had. He had a couple of sisters. She was much older than him. She was like 33 when she died, which was only a couple years after he took the throne after his father died. And she did try to have her brother murdered 2 years into his reign. I guess she saw his crazy sooner than everybody else. The history cites it as her being envious of Commodus's wife, the Empress Crispina, but
Crispina? Mm-hmm. That sounds like a mascot for a breakfast cereal.
I might be saying it wrong, but I'm pretty sure
a princess
it's
fairy that's lovingly painted on the cover of your box of cereal.
Anyways,
Crispina.
So history cites her as being envious of his empress, but I mean, I'm going to side with the woman and say that she just saw his crazy before everybody else did. And she tried to have him murdered, and she failed, and she was exiled and later killed. There actually were some... You said that Maximus was not based on a real person, but there actually are historical figures.
Oh, I just said that there wasn't a Maximus Decimus Meridius.
But there was a real general who did try to claim that he was emperor at Aurelius's death, but his soldiers killed him, so that didn't work. Other figures include, later in history, there was a general named Maximus who had ideas of revolution. And also, I'm going to mess up his name, Diocletian.
I don't know.
Ruled Rome from 284 to 305, and he came from lower classes, but became a general, and then became the emperor's favorite and was named heir. So that also kind of follows where the story started off with Maximus, with Aurelius wanting to make him the protector of Rome. So I think those three figures in history probably meshed together, kind of created the idea of Maximus.
Yeah.
And probably other people too, other things too.
Now, you said something to me the other day when we were watching this. You said that the visions that he's having of, his home and his family and stuff like that, you think that he's hallucinating from a poison?
That's what I think.
So because before this fight, of course, we're in the final battle between...
What else is he hallucinating from?
Maybe loss of blood?
Blood loss,
yeah.
I guess, but we aren't seeing that much blood for him to be hallucinating.
No, but in the scene prior to this, we are in the final battle between Maximus and Commodus, and before the battle, Commodus came up to Maximus while he was still chained up and stabbed him in the back and had his people cover his wound with the armor so that he would be weakened, which is actually something that Commodus, as I understand, actually did. Maybe he didn't stab people, but he would have like disabled people. He would fight disabled people specifically so he would have
or
like
injured
an advantage
people or something like that.
But yeah, you thought that maybe it was like a poison from the stab.
Well, I just don't see any other reason for him to be like, if it punctured his lung and he was dying that way, we don't see him having any trouble breathing. If it's just punctured some vital organ or something and he's bleeding internally and that's what's going to happen, then I mean, I guess that could create hallucinations. But I don't know. It seems more likely that maybe it was poison.
The crowd not saying anything and the crowd just kind of standing with mouths agape. Like I said before, it's kind of, I don't know. I think that if you're paying close enough attention to the movie and you understand that you as the commoner, I guess, watching this piece of entertainment art, the movie is basically just calling you an idiot. Like it's telling you that you are a fool.
Because they're just standing there doing nothing. Is this Quintus? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
What? So, like, what? Are you guys cool now?
So, yeah, he's turned around. So, Maximus is commanding Quintus to free his men and reinstate Senator Gracchus, which is supposed to be the happy ending. Like I said, kill everything until there's nothing left to kill and then put the politicians in charge. Which is just, I don't know. I don't like those politics. That's not a happy ending.
Why are they listening to him now? What? Because the emperor is dead? But I don't get it. What power did the emperor have before to control Quintus that he doesn't have now? I mean, the army was still Maximus's when they were at the battlefield.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand. I don't understand some of the side characters, like, reasons
basic
for
motivations.
doing things.
Yeah. Those basic motivations are just kind of not there.
Anyways, this is the song I was talking about. I love this song.
It's not Enya.
No, it's not Enya.
Well,
who told you it was Enya?
No one told me it was Enya. It's a thing that people say online.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah. No, it's not Enya.
No, it's not Enya.
I'm just trying to clear that up.
Yeah.
It's not Enya.
No, it's not Enya.
Kind of sounds like
Lisa Gerard doing her thing. And this is not a real language. So stop trying to translate it, because you go on and you type "now we are free" into the internet and you see a bunch of translations. Translate this song into English. And I've seen translations of this song and I'm like, what are you translating it from? She just makes up words when she sings.
Is it like that Sting song that I dream of rainy. What does that part mean?
Anyways, glossolalia,
Sure.
I guess is the correct term for what she does in this song, where you make up a language while you're singing.
Doesn't Lewis Carroll do that?
It's kind of like similar to like baby noises.
Does Lewis Carroll do that? Is that the same thing that Lewis Carroll does in like the Jabberwocky?
I don't know.
Where he like just makes up words and no, because it's still English.
Oh! You're talking about the
right. I'm talking about something that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I didn't know what you were going for. No, well, I mean, I guess so, but I don't know.
Not the same thing, probably.
That's different because that's a creation of words that like actually fit into like you can designate them as a noun or a verb or something like that.
Right, and they give you a feeling or an idea, even though they don't actually have a meaning.
You know what brillig feels like. 'Twas brillig. I know what that feels like. Oh, yeah, it's kind of.
It's like, okay, I know what
a slithy tove.
I know what a slithy tove is. Sure,
I know what that is. Right?
I know what it feels like, in my mind. Sure.
You can feel it. You know if it's hot or cold. You know if it's a noun or a verb or an adjective.
Well, bringing that back around, I think what Lisa Gerard is doing is you can kind of feel what a hello is.
No, you can't. But I think it sounds really pretty, and I don't care that it's not a real word because she does it well enough that I was made to believe in my ignorance that maybe this is some language that I don't know. because there are a lot of languages I don't know, and I like it when I don't when I can still hear vocals without having to focus on the words that they're saying, without having to get meaning from those words, because I understand the language.
Okay.
So I like listening to music in other languages, sometimes for the sole purpose of not having to understand.
Like Tibetan throat singing. Like
you're trying to like poke at me right now.
I'm sorry. I'm so done with this movie. I'm so glad we're done with this because you said something toward the beginning of this episode where I said that I don't really like this movie, and I don't. And after watching it for like the third time or something this week, I can definitely say I don't like the movie Gladiator. I don't like it. Can you really say that you like it? Like I want to turn it around on you because you said to me, you were like, really, you don't like it? And no, really, I don't like it. Do you really like it?
Okay. I would watch this movie before I'd watch a lot of the movies that you would have me watch that I know are better movies than this movie.
Okay.
Does that satisfy your answer enough?
Not really, but it's fine. I know what you mean by that, but I don't think our listeners do.
I would put
What kind of movie is that? What kind of movie is it that I would want you to watch or that I would try to get you to watch that you would rather watch this first?
A smart movie that makes you think about things really hard and makes you really...
You're not making yourself look good.
When I go to entertainment for a very specific purpose, and that is to be entertained. And when I go to something because I want to be enlightened, then I go to literature and I read it. And when I'm watching a movie, I don't really care whether or not that happens. I mean, when it happens and it entertains me, then that is the pinnacle and it is perfection and I am so happy with it. But if it just entertains me, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but this only really half entertains and then the other half is just empty promises of
when I'm researching it and I'm having to be serious about it and really think about it, yeah, it's not a great movie, obviously. I mean, duh. Like I said, I was like 2 minutes into it and I heard some dialogue and I was just like, oh God, no, this is what we're doing for 2.5 hours. But the fact is that I like the way it looks. I know you said you think it's ugly. I don't think it's ugly. I like the way it looks. I think it's broad and big. I mean, the Colosseum is way too big, but I like the feeling I get when I watch it, even if it doesn't really make sense. Like if I just have it on TV and I'm not really watching it, that would be fine. Okay.
That's fair. I'll let you have the last word on that. Okay? It
is my movie.
Yeah. Well, now that we've reached the end of the movie, we'd like to read a 5-star review that we received on iTunes. This review comes from D.A.K. Watson or Dak Watson, and this person writes, Popcorn Poops is such a great idea for a podcast that I wish I had thought of it first. As someone who primarily listens to the podcast as opposed to watching the movie along with it, I can say that the hosts, Dustin and Jessica, do a great job informing and entertaining the audience, even if you're not watching along with them. It's cool to hear different perspectives on movies, even when I disagree with them. Cough, Gremlins, cough. I guess our Gremlins episode is not too popular. And they always give me something more to think about. Well, thank you very much for that. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. We do. If you would like to leave us a rating and review on iTunes, we'd really appreciate that too. And if it's a 5-star review, we'll even read it on the show. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. Please follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. If you'd like to receive updates about the show, including our weekly movie still identification game. If you have a question, comment, or movie request for us, you can reach us on our social media outlets or by emailing us at thepopcornpoops@gmail.com. You can also find us individually on Twitter at DustyCramCram and at Jesse Casper. Next week, we'll be continuing our month of Best Picture Oscar winners with Jonathan Demme's 1991 film, The Silence of the Lambs. If you have any questions about that movie or related topics you'd like us to discuss, please contact us through social media or email. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care. Bye-bye. We are the Popcorn Poops.
Hey there, listeners. My name is Ray.
And I'm Luke. Together we are
the Super Hammered Brothers. On our podcast, we talk about video games, anime, comics,
and so much more. Hit a clip from one of our episodes.
I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan. I play Fire Emblem. I get a blast out of it instead of Marth. Marth, you can leave Marth. You know, Marth, just go.
Why do you always have to think against Marth?
Marth is boring. He is the boringest guy in history.
He's like Goku. He's like a guy who comes in and say, "Hey guys, how's it going? I'm here to help you save everybody." I mean, like,
no, Goku's funny because he's stupid. Forget Marth and then bring back Roy. That's what I say.
So if you can listen to Nintendo, we're gonna hashtag bring Roy back.
Roy's our boy. It should be Roy, Ike, Lucina, and Robin. That's who you need. Forget Marth. We don't need Marth. Lucina's Marth, and she's better than him. We're done. If you're interested in hearing more from us, go to our website, superhammeredbros.com.
You can also listen to us on iTunes, watch us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter.
Once again, we are the Super Hammered Bros, and we hope you will geek out with us.